we've got some sort of castle or fort being built, but then they have this, that looks like a type stead there. Yeah. So I do think they've both gone to that, like I said, the Celtic tale age of it, but not seeing anything just yet of the horse goddess or anything. But I think that'll be your kind of finishing touch piece that you bring up, right? Like that'll be where you really
potentially,
it's almost a cherry on top, or like an angel on top of a tree, right?
Yeah.
You want to finish with that because the nature of the theme is that it is a horse goddess who showed up in these Celtic times. You almost want it to be a very normal situation with a Celtic goddess on top of it, right? So that's why I think starting out this way is why the teams have gone for it. I'm wondering what that cherry blossom could be, though. That's the only real whimsical thing I'm starting to see coming through.
The splash of colour.
Exactly, yeah, the splash of colour. Now, that's already catching my eye. Like, I want to know what they've got going on there. But it does seem like on the right-hand side for the green team, we're seeing this fortress really coming together.
Yeah.
But again, they need to make sure they can justify it within the theme correctly. Because at the moment, I'm not quite seeing it. But I really hope to see it all come together because it looks fantastic for what it is. So hopefully they can really build the relevance.
Yeah. Now, one thing I mentioned earlier was Category 5, right? The redstone stuff. Oftentimes you see this towards the latter half of the build battle. We're coming up to the last 10 minutes, the last third of the build battle in both teams. Obviously, you can see over on the green team that they are absolutely nailing this in terms of the texture, actually. I was going to say work initially, but look at that texture with the mossy cobblestone they've incorporated in it to bring a bit more organic life to the actual build itself. I'm hoping the judges will be taking note of that. That's a very, very clean detail to add. They've opted for a lot more cobblestone than the stone brick block that they could use.
Yeah.
And I believe they're using some cobblestone walls here as well, which is actually quite thinner, which has created this sort of distance and variance when it comes to the castle wall itself. So this is a very, very detailed castle that they brought together here as a unit, right? You can see they're all actually working on the same tower right now.
Yeah.
The farmstead was constructed within the first 5 minutes, I would say, right? But also on this green team, I'm loving the fact that we're getting some terraforming. As I mentioned earlier, you can see there's some moss blocks now as well, some variants in the blocks in the actual terrain.
Yeah.
But they've brought up the profile of the build. This is looking fantastic. I believe there's some stone stair blocks as well. I can't really see from there, but you see that slight sort of incline on the tower?
Oh, right, yeah.
That's quite interesting. So it looks like this team is probably pretty experienced in building castles.
Yeah.
They might be trying to utilize their strength of building castles and fitting it to the theme of relevance here. Of course, the luxury of being in Wales and having Welsh-based themes is that there's
always a castle
that can fit every single build battle, right? So that's lovely to see on that side. I would love to see more on the red side, though, and see what they're actually building over there. Because as you mentioned, that splash of color with the cherry blossom looks very, very intriguing.
Yep.
They've actually gone for a far more spread out approach. I think this team, as I mentioned earlier, there does seem to be a lot of area used. However, I'm not seeing much redstone on the green side, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just thinking that. You can see them somewhat now working around the outside of that. But now, as we do get to look over on this red side, so and farm style, as we look at actually filling that up with lots of different color horses. I think those are in there. So some kind of horse ranch going on. Oh, again, finally now coming into this theme, right, of Rhiannon being this god of these horses. As much as you can't guarantee a gleaming white horse to come out, you can at least have, where they might have come from as well. And we can see from there.
You actually see they have a redstone track going around the perimeter as well with a minecart. I'm assuming this might be some sort of interactive, almost like a theme park approach where we get to actually, as a spectator, ride through and experience the theme of Rhiannon, right? When it comes to this build battle in particular. As you mentioned, we've got the horse theme particularly coming through on this side when it comes to the farmstead. They filled it with various types of horses. NPCs, this is what this is considered in the scoring rubric, are actually something that can be counted and has its own sort of scoring point that can be earned. So it's quite interesting that we can see it on this side. I believe on the side of the green team that they actually have some form of horses or farm animals in that farmstead that they created. Obviously, from our perspective, we couldn't really see it early on.
Yeah.
However, we have a stone brick platform coming in the middle of this red build arena, right?
Yeah.
That might be a base for a statue. As you mentioned, you want to see the horse god sort of symbolism standing nice and proud up in the middle of the center of the build. I would like to see a little bit more verticality from the red team, though.
Definitely, yeah.
There's a lot of horizontal space used, right? And the fact that they've already started incorporating redstone is great, right? Green team has not got to the redstone stage yet. When I was going through the process of the group stages and whatnot, a lot of redstone you'd see would utilize timers, clocks, or manual inputs to launch off fireworks, usually in the color or the sort of theme of the build. Now, I don't know if we'll see some sort of firework launching display when it comes to this build battle in particular. How sort of relevant that is, that's also important when it comes to the redstone.
Yes.
And another point with the redstone as well is how well it's hidden. I'm wondering if we can't see any redstone on the green side ourselves as a spectator because they've already hidden it.
Ooh, that would be a really impressive moment. Because like you said, we can't see anything visually yet, but it's part of the scoring criteria, right? You would assume someone on the team is tasked with actually focusing on where that's going to go. But you actually see now for YBB Wolfpack, they're beginning to build what looks like some kind of statue here as well. We've said it's a gleaming white horse, right? And I'm starting to see the look of maybe some legs there and then part of a body coming up. So actually trying to, like I said, put that cherry on top with this white horse outside of the, castle/farmstead. Very interesting to see the two different takes on one on the left-hand side being more of a village feeling to me, that center platform almost looks like more of a town square, but then with obviously the right-hand side being more castle and goddess type things. So it's looking like two very, very distinctively different builds, obviously with the same prompt though. So it's exciting to see how the final build will turn out and how these differences compare when we can see everything fully come through and see if anyone has really nailed the prompt.
Now, as you mentioned, on the side of the YBB Wolfpack, right, it seems like they're trying to create the whole sort of statue you mentioned, right? They must have been listening in across the room. It's impossible to listen in, by the way. However, it is very difficult to create something organic in a block sort of based game, right? The scale, if you scale it up, it makes it a lot easier, as you can imagine. You can add more detail. You can create more of a form, right, when it comes to the blocks. It's almost like molding clay. If you were to sort of apply it to an in real life situation. But it's very difficult depending on what sort of scale you're using. However, I don't think this is a horse. I think this is Rhiannon herself, the goddess, stepping up, ruling over her kingdom and the farmstead that she has nearby. But we're moving into the last 5 minutes of the build battle, right? We can see there's the horse.
There's the horse. There
in the giant farmstead. We didn't get to see this perspective, but that's lovely to see from the side of the YBB Wolfpack. And again, the variance in the texture of the blocks, this looks fantastic. Iron bars actually at the top of the towers to create the sort of ridges that you see on traditional castles, of course. We have Rhiannon herself sort of being constructed, standing over her domain. Over on the red team, however, we've gone for a little bit more of like a microbiome approach, right?
Definitely, yeah.
That's what I'm seeing over here. As you mentioned, it feels a lot more town-like, a lot sort of more Celtic in a sense, and we have that redstone sort of snaking path all the way through. We can actually see, I was going to say this, the green team has considered the environment. That's one of the points they need to consider, okay? Where have they sort of decorated surrounding empty space, the negative space? It's very easy to use bone meal to create a very organic approach. All the sort of variants of plant life you can get in the flowers, right? In the Minecraft universe. Obviously, we've got that working over here. This looks like it might be related to some sort of theme of love or wedding.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, these schools have done a lot more research than we might have. We have a little blurb to sort of tell us what the theme is, but they might be able to inform us actually a little bit more. I'm hoping, maybe not in this one, but another build battle, we can have some of the students come up and tell us a bit more about their research and what they're using when it comes to the build battle. Obviously, on the side of YBB Wolfpack, we can see Rhiannon, the goddess herself, coming together really nicely here. It looks like she's sitting on a little mountain within her domain space, right?
Yes.
What are you thinking between these two different outcomes?
So, I really like the decision for YBB Wolfpack to go for this. This feels like Rhiannon's home, right? It feels like Rhiannon's place, like Rhiannon's castle with Rhiannon's horse. I'm also noticing the beacons being, I believe, the representation for the magical birds. I think it might be what they're going for there as well. So I do like the choice there to make it focused on Rhiannon herself. Whereas for the other side, it feels more, as we were speculating at the start, a representation of Rhiannon within the actual world space where she would have come from, right? So I think that's really interesting to see how different both of these have gone for. Right now, I really like the detail of the village for the red team there on the left-hand side. I think St. Joseph's has done a good job of making a very living space, right? It feels like you've stumbled across this village, right? And this it doesn't feel as much of a shrine to Rhiannon, right? It just feels more of a normalized situation for Rhiannon. Yeah. Where, like I said, the YBB Wolfpack having this dedicated space to Rhiannon is more of an art piece, I would say. So it really will come down to the judge's interpretation on this, because there's so much quality on both sides that for me, it's quite hard to split them.
I have to say, by the way, on the side of St. Joseph's, what they've done is to make it feel like a living, breathing town. You can't actually control how mobs move in Minecraft, unless you're obviously holding the item of choice, right? When it comes to breeding them, of course, or feeding them. To get the horses moving, they'd have to be holding wheat of some sort, right? However, the students can't be in the build arena after the fact. So what they've done on the side of St. Joseph's, this redstone track, I was wondering what it was. Originally, I thought it was like a theme park sort of viewing route. However, what they've done is, you can see in the minecarts, horses are actually going up and down the railroads. That makes it look like horses are racing through the town. That's a very creative way to utilize the redstone. And I'll be honest, as a judge who's been following this Minecraft League the entire way through, I have not seen a single team use this to this day. Maybe St. Joseph's has whipped this out for this semi-finals, quarterfinals, and then finals, of course. They're really here to win this build battle. That's a very, very, very creative way to use redstone. Of course, entities, mobs, players is normally the sort of entity you put in these minecarts, can ride them. However, putting a horse in it is genius. Yeah. Absolutely genius. So I think it still has this sort of theme park itemized sort of space, right? Where you can figure out different parts that are relevant to the theme of Rhiannon when it comes to this build battle. I quite like that. If we discuss briefly for the last minute, the teamwork and approach between the two teams, right? One team went very isolated. You can see the outcome at the end. I feel like this is very cohesive.
Yes.
And on the other side of YBB Wolfpack, they've obviously got very teamwork orientated, work together. They literally built it tower by tower.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They have 20 seconds left in this build battle. Oh, as I mentioned earlier, you might see some fireworks, right?
Yeah, the timer ticking down on screen of us. Yeah, the time has officially run out. We have 10 seconds on the screen, but in person they are out of time. And yeah, we will be getting to see these final builds coming through. Yeah, you do see, like you said, the fireworks coming out on the side of YBB Wolfpack, which is a very cool way to handle that. We did also see a bit of dotting the I's and crossing the T's from St. Joseph's. We saw one horse gone astray outside of the box, and it was summarily cut down. Not sure exactly how happy with that Rhiannon would be, but there we go. That's how the teams have opted to clean it up. And yeah, I think both teams will be happy with this outcome. No matter who ends up moving on to the final, I think both teams have done a really good job of actually, really coming to a neat and tidy composition at the end of that. And I got to say, that was a lot of fun to watch. It was 30 minutes and it absolutely flew by. It's just so much happening there.
It is. And when you're judging it as well, it's very difficult because you're actually judging as it goes through, right?
Yeah.
During the whole process through the group stages, they'd have shoutcasters come up and sort of introduce who they are, their role in the team, what they're doing, and their team sort of approach, right? Some teams would have researchers that informs the build battle a lot more, right?
Yep.
And then some teams would also have researchers, or every single builder be a researcher themselves. And so they have different strategies, different approaches. As you can see, I feel like we saw very different approaches in that build battle.
Oh, yeah.
But equally as strong. For those who've never seen a build battle before, as you saw at the 30-minute mark, all of the players are actually teleported outside of the arena. So if they didn't actually finish in time, they cannot touch it. Which means, on the scoring rubric as well, what the judges are using to sort of document and figure out what score each team gets for each category, there's actually a section for how fast you finish the build. Has all the houses got roofs on them, right?
Yep.
Does it look like the environment's been considered? All of these things, again, it's to the judge's discretion. They'll discuss this and come to a sort of common agreement. but it's a very important thing to consider when it comes to the build battle as well. So that was 30 minutes. They had all hands on deck, right? I think that was a very good pair of outcomes both sides.
Yeah,
I'm pretty happy from also being a previous judge myself. That's a very hard build battle to sort of differentiate between two, right?
Yeah.
We have actually the next teams coming up. I don't know if you would like to introduce them in.
So it looks like up next we'll be having the Penybont Cobras versus the Aberdare Allstars as well. That will be our next round coming through there. Let's just check the age group on that there. So we'll be moving on to the first actually of the ALN esports groups as well. So we're going to head for a couple of minutes break just to get everything set up. But we'll be right back with another game.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Principality Stadium. We're heading right on in to our very next matchup here. Come through. We got the Penybont Cobras versus the Aberdare Allstars. And Leon, I've heard all the players are a little bit impatient to get started. We had a bit of a false start, but now we're up and running. Let's get right on into the game and get it all going. Now, I do have to find out exactly what the theme was for this one. I don't think we picked that up yet, so I might try. I'm gonna go find out. But see what you can see without the theme. So it should be one of these ones. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to have an assessment of what they're doing and see if you can figure out what the theme is.
Yeah, a guessing game, right? Well, this is going to be very hard, to be honest with you, because obviously they only created the stage actually for what they're building. However, I can see over on the Aberdare All-Stars that it looks like they're creating a tree trunk that's coming actually through the ground ahead of time. So they're creating the base for both sides. On the side of the Penybont Cobras, they've actually created a raised base, which I'm assuming is to hide some redstone. But we're already back. Judas, do you know what theme it is? Can I guess?
Very first, I want you to guess. So it is one of these three.
One of these. So we have Gwion and the Witch. We have Lady in the Lake. I'm not seeing a lake. However, that sand suggests a tiny lake. And then we have Mary Lloyd. Lloyd. There we go. That's a very poor pronunciation of Welsh, but I'll take it. So we have essentially like a Holy Mary character, a glacial lake on the western flanks of the Bracken Beacons, and then we have one of the earliest Welsh poets whose name we know, the Witch. Now, I see a tree trunk coming here. Fantastic. We've actually got confirmation that we'll have one of the students coming up. Penybont Cobras will come and talk about their build battle. Thank you very much. I can see a tree trunk. I can also see a bit of a lake. If we could have a look at the Penybont Cobras over on the green side, that's obviously a lake coming through, okay? It's gonna be, I'm honestly right now, I feel like it's between Gwion and the Witch and the lake. From what I can see with Aberdare All-Stars, I'm leaning towards the lake. From the side of...
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
that's
okay.
really nice.
The Penybont Cobras. I'm really loving the terraforming here. They've been through a river. This is not a lake. So it can't be labeled a lake. It's Gwion the Witch.
It is indeed Gwion on the Witch, so well done. Nice process of deduction, yeah. And I will just quickly run through Gwion on the Witch and what it is. So this is the story of the birth of Taliesin, one of the earliest Welsh poets whose name we know, and the witch Ceridwen.
Fantastic.
Carried one. And Gwion, her servant, must keep the fire burning for a year and a day under the cauldron where the magic brew simmers. So, one thing, so immediately there, right, you have a big key point to work on. You have a cauldron and a servant who has to keep the cauldron burning for a year and a day. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that wants to be represented, but also... If they want to have any sort of hints on a later part in the prompts where apparently a magic drop jumps onto Gwion's finger and he sucks his scalded finger, and it is he, not Morvan, who will become the great poet. So
a twist.
There's a lot going on here in this prompt. It's actually probably one of the bigger prompts we've had. But like you said earlier, it's when you get these prompts, they're up for your interpretation, and you can sort of do with them as you see fit. And I'm really excited to see how they attack this cauldron, and if they want to have any representation of this sort of battle of the poets going on.
Yes. And again, a lot of spells mentioned, right? A lot of magic involved.
Yep.
This is going to be a very, very clear sort of build battle where a lot of majestic, magical themes are going to come through, right? Now, in actual Minecraft itself, I don't know if you've played yourself, but there is a biome called the Dark Forest, right?
Okay.
That has giant mushrooms, overarching sort of trees that sort of like feel almost eerie in a sense, right? They actually recently brought out a new biome called the Creaking, which has this sort of creature, there's a wooden sort of treant that sort of follows you through it, right?
Oh, wow.
That, I feel like, would play very well into this particular build battle.
Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see what sort of tree biome they try to incorporate in their builds. Again, as I mentioned that, we actually have a dark forest tree immediately spawned. I believe that's one of them. So the fact that I mentioned that and immediately spawned on the Penybont Cobras, hey, I'll take it, right? They must be listening again. Who knows? Who knows? But I have noticed that both teams have included water, right? There is no mention of water or sort of river or a lake in the theme that we just mentioned. This might come from their research, or I'm actually curious if they've incorporated a little bit of the other themes they had in mind And they always had the intention of making sure that there was some sort of like collaboration between multiple themes just in case.
Yes.
This might be like a practice sort of approach. I actually stand corrected. These aren't dark forest trees. I thought the first one was, but it's a little bit too tall. These are jungle trees. So they've gone for a very fantastic tall trees towering over the build. Now, as you mentioned, one key thing to keep note of is that cauldron, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the key sort of factors in the story of Grion and the Witch. We can see a sort of structure coming along over on the side of the Penybont Cobras. Will this house the cauldron? Is the cauldron going to be a giant feature that's in the middle of the build? Who knows? We'll have to see that build develops. However, on the Aberdare Allstars, on the red team, I think I see in a glass or sphere a water bottle, or maybe this is the cauldron itself, right?
Yes, it did look a bit like the cauldron, and I'm wondering what this structure has to do exactly with the cauldron. I was suspicious for a second that could be the cauldron. Whereas, like you saw over here, you see this glass sphere coming out. I wonder if that's the droplet that we were talking about of this. It's the droplet that supposedly spat out of the cauldron. Yeah. It's a really nice way of showing it, like the glass surrounding the water. That is incredibly cool, and a really creative way of showing that. And hopefully we get to find out for certain when the build is done if that's what it's part of. But yeah, I'm liking how they're using a creative method of just physics, right? That's gravity on show in a freeze frame for this build project. I think that's really cool.
One thing I want to mention as well is I said that typically when it comes to a build battle, you see redstone towards the latter half, right? Yes. Granted, we are coming up to the middle part of this build battle already, by the way.
Yeah,
it's been flying by. You can see that the Aberdare Allstars has raised their platform. You can see there's actually a bit of a gap, and they've actually sunk the lake into the base platform that they built. So they're not only building the environment, right? They're building it in mind with the structures they're including. But on the note of redstone, you can see there's a wall of observers here, right? Now, typically, when you do something like this, it's to create a pattern with some sort of redstone lamp, right?
Yeah.
So this might be like a light show to represent the magic and the spell weaving in a sense.
Okay.
And see what they actually end up coming with, that sort of creative outcome. But the fact that they've already started lining this up, you can see that they have a redstone dedicated builder in their team.
Yeah.
So from a teamwork structured side of things, when we hopefully have the Penybont Cobras come over, right? Also looking at the Aberdare Allstars here, we can see that they're working in that isolated, they have specialists for each individual field, right? We have a builder, we have someone who's done the lake with a magic floating water, maybe a cauldron, right? And as I said, look at that. That's the redstone lamps coming out based off of the themes. It looks like it's going to be a sort of wave coming up through it. I'm hoping they manage to finish this because this is some advanced redstone engineering, trying to create a pattern with redstone lamps, right? That's not the easiest thing to do, especially talking from my own experience. But on the side of the Penyboat Cobras, they've actually taken a far more unified approach, kind of similar to the first two teams we had.
Yes, where it's more of a, like you said, a team on, right, we're going to set out this structure. One thing I would like to shout out is the extremely natural looking river running through the center. You know, this isn't just a path that you've then filled with water. They've taken, you know, erosion into mind, building this small bridge over the top of it as well. I really like the way that's been done. This looks incredibly homely and natural while still having this sort of woodland, eerie, whimsical feel, you know. This would be what you'd imagine like a witch's shack to be, right? You know, hidden in the big tall forest and everything, nearby some water, so it's very convenient living space. But look how quickly this has come up, right? We looked away for about 5 minutes or so, and it's very much developed into, you know, this really like sort of enchanted forest style feel. You see how tall the trees are actually going on top of one another as well, to get this really shadowy feeling.
On the note of redstone, we've seen it on the side of the Aberdare Allstars. The Penyboat Cobras, however, they have a railway underneath the water, waterlogged rails. I'm curious to know if they plan on running, oh my god, as I said, they actually have, I think that's a villager, or they have some sort of little entity going back and forth in the river on the minecart. So they have a redstone on their side as well. That is fantastic. You can see they've already, like, terraform was the first thing this team tackled, right? They carved that river out. They brought up this sort of build battle arena that they have, and they've created a variance in the build sort of spaces that they have. They've gone for a far more organic approach, right? A diagonal bridge, looking very effective. And I want to take a note actually on the aesthetics of the building that they've created, right? You can see they actually have a sort of like a trimming towards the roof of the building, using some spruce trapdoors and various half slabs of blocks. Wow. That looks fantastic.
It's incredible stuff, you know, like a really textured feel, like I mentioned, like natural and homely. It's similar to like we saw in the first build with the like farmstead style stuff. It just looks like how these buildings would have looked, right? We're using this blocky style of Minecraft, this format where it tends to be in chunks at a time, but the fact that they're actually managing to make this look very, very natural and, like we said, organic as well, more terraforming going on to create these natural looking landscapes. But look how quickly they're doing it, just flying through this. It's just so impressive how these are not easy to quickly throw these sorts of things together. Yeah, we do see actually on the left hand side a bit of a completion on that signage we were looking at. So I think that might be a Weon sign there might actually be lit up. And it's going to light up as we say the pattern coming through.
We look away for a second, and the Aberdare Allstars have already created a finished redstone sign using the observers to create the pattern. They actually, as you mentioned, written out the name of Gwion the Witch, right, which is going to light up in waves. Yeah, that's fantastic. But we looked away for a second, and half their environment is already done. They had a bunch of holes in different plots of land to actually build the different structures in. But as I said, we looked away for a second, and they've already completed half of it. They've already actually considered the environment and terraformed it as well.
Yeah, and I really like the use of, you see all the flowers and the weeds being placed among the trees. Now, they haven't gone on the Aberdare All-Star side for this, tall, dark, scary forest, right? But they have gone for a very natural-looking place. It's a wild landscape, right? It's not clean, grassy fields, It has got all of this weed and all these flowers. And, as we've been working, we've actually got a special guest coming over. So I'm just going to ask you, what's your name there, buddy? Tyler, right. What school have you come over from? Yep. Okay, so we just want to ask you quick about your team and how you've come about doing this today. So we wanted to know, what have you decided to do for this project? Have you got any real core themes in mind? And basically, what's the main part of your build that you guys are all working on today?
They're mostly working on the cabin and the build in general. We got our redstonists made the baby moving with easy redstone. For more detail. We're just trying to make sure the build is finished in general and make it look quite good for the build itself.
Now, one thing we've been touching on is talking about how natural everything looks, right? This big, dark, scary forest that you've gone for as well. Was that one of the themes you were looking for? Do you want it to make very ominous looking, something that that a witch would live in, basically? Was that one of the first things you were looking at?
Yeah, we were trying to make it more dark and ominous for a witch to live in.
Oh, brilliant. And last thing, how are you feeling about it? Are you confident with how it's gone, and are you feeling like you maybe make it through to the next round?
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly, yeah. Well, we'll let you get back to your team, right? Thank you for joining us there. Great stuff to talk to you there. Really cool. Really nice to see how the players want to approach, right? I wasn't sure how they come across, but it touched on everything, that mentioned a little touch of redstone in the water too. Really cool. It's nice to know what we've been talking about is also what's been in the front of the minds of the players.
Right? We've had a good read on this so far. Thank you very much to the Penyboat Cobras having somebody come over to talk to us and give it also shoutcasting, confirming our suspicions, right, with how they've approached the build. As they even mentioned, they have a redstone master and engineer at work that's obviously managed to make this waterlogged railway. That's very hidden, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, category 5, that redstone category, one of the major points you get rewarded for is hiding the redstone. So obviously in the first build battle, we had that redstone track exposed, right? However, they had to, because you want that horse running on land, of course.
Yes, of course.
This is a very, as I mentioned earlier, creative way to use that track underneath the water, right? The Penyboat Cobras very clearly had a very clear vision coming into mind for this, right? I'd love to know if they had a leader that informed this, or if this was the researchers that actually made this whole decision, right? But at this point, it looks like they've actually almost wrapped up 20 minutes or 10 minutes early compared to potentially the Aberdare Allstars.
And as I mentioned just now in that small interview, the focus was get the actual build completed and now start working on some details. And that's why you're seeing a bit more of a congregation of the players on that far side, right? They're sort of looking between them all like, okay, how can we make this look a bit better? Do we need our trees to be taller?
Yeah.
Do we need our river to be deeper and everything? But like you said, how they've managed to put it together so quickly allows them this time now to really fine check. You can actually see one of the players is just almost as our observer style, just looking over the whole build and informing everyone as well. And we can see we've actually got a lot of the players, the messengers of the group, so the players who are not actually building and hands on the PC, but the ones who are just passing messages back between them and the researchers. They're all gathered around now, right, looking into it, really trying to fine-tune this piece. And it looks incredible.
Now, one thing that I haven't seen too much, that's the cauldron, by the way. We actually see the cauldron right next to the build, so it's actually contextually two sides, right? I was going to mention the category 3 about the space, the area, how much total space been used. They have made an origin point for this river, right? They've terraformed it. They've used a lot of vertical space, not just the tree. I think the tree informed how much vertical space they're going to use in an organic sense, right? But they've actually sort of molded the build area to fit that sort of theme. A very, very cohesive, strong team. I really think that outside perspective of the observer that they have on the team, that must be the team leader that's sort of directing people and informing people. I want to see what's going on the other side of the build battle arena on the Aberdare All-Stars. I think this side has very clearly had their design sort of come together in exactly what they envisioned in a sense, right?
Definitely.
And I think the Aberdare All-Stars has probably achieved something very similar. Looking over here, I can say, my oh my, look at that animation on the redstone.
Lovely.
I have to say, if you're a judge looking at this, right, you have one redstone element that's hidden in the river with the child going back and forth. It's contextual to the narrative of Beyond and the Witch, right? However, over here, this sign, they actually originally had, they had copper, I think, that had oxidized a lot. And then waxed it. They've actually changed that to prismarine for a little bit more texture, okay? Prismarine is a very saturated block that's hard to use. They've used this to make this sign stand out, right? That's very visually stunning. And the animation we just saw through those redstone lights, backed with the observers, was stellar. That is incredible. Obviously, on this side, they've actually gone for a little bit of a more contained area space. It feels a little bit more intimate in a sense. I want to describe it, right? However, I'm seeing very similar iconography or symbolism to the story of Beyond the Witch. Exactly the same from the Penyboat Cobras, right? They have the shack, they have that element of magic and spell weaving, right? We have the floating sort of water in the lake as well. I'm trying to see if we can find that cauldron that is so often referenced to. It might actually be inside the house.
Yes, it could be inside the house. It could also be that lake that we're touching on, right? Maybe they've envisaged the cauldron to be quite large, right? It was much as we talk on, you say the word cauldron and we think of very traditional cauldron, but they might have, thought of it to be more magical, more of a mini lake, if anything, and you can see that the way that they framed the house leading to this small lake, it's the most important thing, right? That's why it's front and center from the observer's perspective as well. It's right at the front of the build. It's because that I believe that could be the cauldron that they're looking for there. And I think with them going with the drop coming out of the cauldron, along with that Gwion sign as well, I think they are actually trying to capture specifically the moment that the drop has splashed onto Gwion's finger. So I think that this is meant to be a freeze frame of an instant. And it's really sprucing it up now with the fireworks as well.
I think that is probably a reference to the magic, right?
Yes.
They have magic casting, popping in the background, very sort of fantastical, very dynamic as well, right? It's quite visually a feast to look at. The fireworks always do great when it comes to these build battles, right? I know a lot of judges love seeing the dispensers with the fireworks. Because you can actually customize the fireworks with various colors, explosion rates, how far it travels, right? There's a lot of creativity you can have involved in it. One thing I want to highlight, though, this little bridge leading to the lake, you're using trapdoors to frame it, right? To create this very thin profile on either side. Normally you'd use a fence, right? That's very standard. However, in this case, I quite like that creative, varied approach in comparison. One thing I'd like to note as well, they have lanterns on chains floating up and out of the river for lighting, right? Lighting is something that we haven't seen so far. We've only seen one build battle, to be fair, right?
Yes.
But in this case, we have two different approaches to the lighting. On one side, we have chained lanterns floating out, very, again, magical, fantastical in a sense, right? On the other side of the Penyboat Cobras, they've actually got sea lanterns in the river decorating it. So that river is actually glowing over on their side, okay? And one thing I want to note as well, this very, very key detail, they've added particles in the side of the Aberdare Allstars with magma blocks. If you put that in the water, it'll pop bubbles up and it'll pop out. So in this sense, we might be seeing a cauldron that is a land-based cauldron, right?
Yeah, and
a little bit more sort of nature-esque, right? Obviously, the fantasy element of Welsh folklore is very sort of nature-based, naturally.
Yes.
So we might be seeing a very creative take on a cauldron. It's not the sort of traditional, even block in this case, it's in Minecraft, right?
Yeah. I think what we're seeing here, I believe that will be Gwyon's finger touching the block. I think that's what they're going for here. Now, we discussed scale and everything and how that's part of it. And yes, while this is not a realistic scale, what I think they're going for here is, as I touched on earlier, this is the most important moment of the story, right? Well, so emphasizing this cauldron popped out and straight on to Gwyon's finger, and then, like I said, I think the fireworks will pop. I think the light show will go with Gwion, with the Gwion sign in the back as well. I think it's a really cool way to highlight this moment.
One thing that's really interesting as well, we were talking about this very rustic feel from the earlier build backs, right? What this team has done on the Aberdare All-Stars, they've used vines to decorate the wood, right? We saw earlier, cobblestone has a mossy cobblestone variant. There is no mossy equivalent of wood-based planks in the game, right? This is a very, very interesting way to layer texture on top of each other to achieve that. You can see there's some final sort of decorations going along as well with the terraforming. They're actually decorating and including the environment. A lot of sunflowers. These sunflowers don't grow naturally, so they've placed these intentionally, okay? And they've actually, I think they removed a lot of the red flowers as well, and a lot of yellow flowers.
Yes.
There's clearly a reason behind that. Perhaps something that we don't know about Gwion.
So they've researched, right? You know, they've got researchers throughout, even for these last couple of minutes, looking for whatever little details they can have. Maybe someone has found something about these yellow flowers or these sunflowers that is meant to be around the witch's house and everything. So again, attention to detail, right? It's not just flowers and weeds, it's yellow flowers and weeds in this forest to create this magical forest style. And, you know, yellow flowers in particular, if you look just yellow flowers, very unnatural, right? So actually having it this way, again, adds to that whimsical, magical feeling.
Yeah, there's a bit of intent behind it,
definitely.
I love to see in the last 2 minutes, if we can pan out
and see how both
entire builds of the pair of them. I feel like both teams, we said this really early on, they nailed the build battle process, right? And as we eventually obviously zoom out here, the Aberdare All-Stars and Penyboat Cobras, these two are really strong in terms of teams that have come together today in the Principality Stadium for this build battle Minecraft Hub event. I'd say it's very hard for the judges to pick. I think different categories could be awarded to different teams.
If
you actually tally it all up, I think this is very close.
It's ridiculously close. I got to say, I'm glad I'm sat here and not in the judges' seat, because I really don't know how to split these two sides. Like we said, we've discussed how these are very intentionally different interpretations of this topic, right? It's, you know, while we're seeing from the side of Penybont Cobras, the more magical feeling, right? The dark and gloomy forest that they've gone for, and they've incorporated, you know, this baby in the river, which again is something they would have pulled from their research. That is not in the default brief, right? It's something they have discovered and they have thought is a very prominent topic. Whereas, and you know, the fact that they've got it actually mobile is where it's more of a living scene, like we said before. Whereas on the side of the Aberdare All-Stars, you're seeing a freeze frame of what they consider the most important moment of the story as well. And you see it there, triggered in action, the light show on the show for us there. And I think you hear the countdown coming in. Everyone's ready for this one to wrap up. It's too close to call, but everyone's ready to start. There is the countdown gone through. Wow. Great show again. And another really fantastic pair of builds.
Yes, absolutely. So, as obviously the teams step away from their build battle sort of stations, I would like to note, obviously we saw that sign light up at the end, right?
Yeah.
Not only do they have the actual sign animated itself, they actually have a different custom redstone loop for the ring around it.
Oh, wow.
The attention to detail is incredible. And the fact that we managed to capture that last second, I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
It's going to be an absolute nightmare for the judges to be able to judge between these two teams. Again, very strong. From a teamwork side of things, again, a different approach, very sort of unified on the side of the Penyboat Cobras, right? For the Aberdare side as well, they started off very separated. They actually had little plots of land.
Yes.
They allocated, right? That was very structured. I'd argue it was some of the most structured we've seen, even though it was isolated in different groups. It's quite a unique approach, right? And the fact that it works, it's nice to see that different teams have the opportunity to use different strategy and still be effective.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. It shows it's how Minecraft is, right? You can sort of do it your own way, however you see fit to make this work. It seems to work differently for all these different teams. You know, we've seen 4 teams so far, and lots of different ways that each of them have done it, right? There was also the first game of the day that was actually not broadcasted, but I got to watch a bit of them, and it's very different again, you know, the way that the teams are all tackling it. So just waiting to hear who the next teams coming through are. We'll get that to you guys as soon as we can, but really cool. And basically, how are you feeling for these builds so far? Are you feeling like, you know, is this better than what you were expecting even?
I mean, I'll be honest, right? I've been a judge leading up to this point. I actually have judged the Penyboat Cobras before.
Oh, really?
They are incredibly good at making castles and actual structures and buildings. So I'm not surprised that that shack that they made really shined through. It's one of the first things that they made after creating the environment, right?
Yeah.
The person who is responsible for the sort of general design of his multiple people, they are very, very, very talented in that regard. The Aberdare Allstars, though, however, their redstone engineer are incredibly good. Like I said, it's an absolute treat to be able to see this very dynamic and varied approach. The fact that they managed to fit all that redstone inside of one sign, by the way, that's very difficult. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
And I've been playing Minecraft for over 10 years now. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just about to get my doors to work, all right? Yeah. This is really impressive. We have actually had the next teams coming through. It will be the Maes Miners versus the Maerdy Miners coming up next as well.
Thank you very much.
Again, we're going to head off for a quick break, get that all set up, but see you for the next game.
Absolutely. Catch you in a bit.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Principality Stadium. It's again some Minecraft build battles coming in, and once again, we're going straight into the game. We've got Maes Miners versus the Maerdy Miners, and I believe they're already a couple of minutes in, so let's jump in and see how these builds are going.
Right. Oh my, we've managed to miss 9 minutes of the build battle so far. So we can see that the base is already created. We actually know the theme ahead of time for this one. And I'm assuming you guys, just like I guessed it previously, you guys might be able to guess it yourselves, at least based off of the Maes Miners side. We'll see how the Maerdy Miners actually managed to bring it in. If you give them the theme for this build battle, Judas.
So it is indeed Lady of the Lake, or, and I'm going to try this, Glyn van Vach. I hope that was good. Yeah, it sounded good on my end. But yeah, so it is a glacial lake on the western flanks of the Banai Brychain, or the Brecon Beacons, for the people who can speak it more easily. But yeah, it's the Brecon Beacons National Park as well. And yeah, it's where the beautiful Lady of the Lake lived. And she married a local farmlad with a prenuptial clause that if he struck her 3 times, she would return to her lake and take all the farm animals with her. And typical, Leon, of Welsh folklore, didn't go well for the marriage. And yeah, she does end up returning to the lake with all of the wolves. But yes, I think it'll be interesting to see, similar to how we discussed for these other topics, where the priorities lie for the teams. Like, are they going to look for a more of an overview style theme of it, or are they going to look for maybe the specific moment that the Lady of the Lake leaves, right? You can take those freeze frame moments as well. So plenty of options to go for, again, up to the players' interpretations.
Absolutely. I think there's a missed opportunity here, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
There's some very clear pointers when it comes to the theme for this build battle. The Brecon Beacons and a lake, right?
Yeah.
A lake is obviously going to be represented here. It's the Lady of the Lake after all. But the Brecon Beacons, talking about the terrain, right, and terraforming, in the past build battle, we saw a very good variance of the actual sort of valleys and bills when it comes to the river, right? But also on the Aberdare side, right? They raised up the terrain themselves as well.
Yes.
It looks like here we've gone for like a very specific microbiome of the lake itself. I'm assuming both teams in this case have actually gone for more of an iconography, almost symbolism route, right?
Yes.
When I was going through the judge battling before, or judging of the build battles, I'm not battling anyone as a judge. What I noticed was teams would either go through for a very literal representation of it, or they'd go the other route where they would do a lot of symbolism, a lot of like icons, right? Some would literally do 2D pixel art, for example.
Right, of course,
I think this might be an opportunity where we'll see that when it comes to these two teams. I'm not too sure yet. We can see in this case, on the Maerdy Miners side, they've actually gone for like a microbiome approach of the little lake, right?
Yeah.
It looks like they have a church sort of being constructed in the corner as well, using some, I believe that's some terracotta, right?
Looks like
this is actually a pretty hard block to use, in my opinion, because it's quite... it lacks texture, okay?
Yes.
So it's quite hard to capture depth and variance. So it'll be interesting to see if they perhaps frame it with some logs, etc., or if they include some more blocks on it, as we can actually see over here. But if we have a look at the Maes Miners side as well at some point, I'd be very curious to see what the green team is up to with their sort of approach on the lake, right?
Yes. Yeah. To see what they're going for with the little sprinkles on the ground, right? It's very...
The cherry blossoms.
Yeah, cherry blossoms again coming through. And it's very... it's very pretty at the moment. It's very, we discussed how it's a Brecon Beacons, one of the, nicest looking landscapes, right? So actually going for this style. Now, I don't believe there are cherry blossoms in the Brecon Beacons, but, this is a bit of a reimagining as well going through. And I believe that is the center point lake there for the Lady Miners coming through. It looks like they've got some kind of structure within that, though. I'm wondering if this will be somewhat of a monument for the Lady of the Lake. And now we see on the Maes Miners side, more of a natural looking lake, right? You see the little beachfront style on those edges there as well. That's a really nice way to do that.
I mentioned this earlier, right? When it comes to terraforming and landscaping in Minecraft, we had a very, very, very... It's actually a more recent update where they introduced the moss block. It's almost like a carpet layer of this very luscious textured green, okay? But also it creates this little bush block as well, and it can actually grow into a tree as well from that if you use bone meal on it. you can actually see that the Maes miners over here have decided to go with this in their approach. We're making a very luscious land, right? If you think the Brecon Beacons, it's very natural, untouched, right?
Yes.
Truly a national park that is worthy of its name of being a beautiful place to visit in Wales, right? And I think we've definitely captured it in two different ways, right? On the side of the Maerdy miners, we've gone for a lot more pretty approach with the flowers, right? Representing those cherry blossom petals on the floor. On the Maes miners side, we've gone for a much more luscious green, a little bit more textured, almost like a little bit more wild in a sense as well, right? We have some tall grass here, which is very interesting to see. The lake here, as we mentioned, is actually a glacial lake. The interesting thing about this is, believe it or not, this is actually blue stained glass. It's not actually water. From our perspective, we have a very little screen to look at when it comes to this build battle. It actually looks like it's water itself. So they've actually used the blue stained glass to sort of recreate and suggest that it is actually water. They've included sea lanterns, right?
Yeah.
Lighting, one of those, I think it's the third one about the blocks, the highlights, the visuals, right? The third category, lighting, is very important. Having this lake glow puts emphasis on it, right?
Yes,
it is,
definitely.
after all, the lady of the lake.
Yeah.
However, there's a glacial lake, right? This is a glacial lake in the story. I want to see, there we go, some form of ice or snow involved, right?
Yeah. Like I said, it's very natural looking lake, but with, especially in the Brecon Beacons, a glacial lake not being particularly natural, right? So getting this very interesting juxtaposition style look coming through, I think that's really cool. They've also got this wooden structure on the way up there. You see, they're actually using shaved logs.
Yeah.
I think those are called there, to create this very manufactured look to it, but also keeping that rustic rural style coming through as well. So I'm wondering how or what that structure is meant to end up being. It doesn't quite look like a house, right, Leon? That doesn't look like somewhere you'd live.
Yes.
But I'm not quite sure what that is meant to turn out to be.
However, I think it might end up having a roof on it, right? The way they've done this, it's kind of like almost like a log cabin where you have the logs poking out the side.
Right.
That looks like a very sturdy foundation for the roof to sit on. I'd love to be able to zoom out and see both teams, how the build is going in comparison, right?
Yeah.
The pacing is really important too. Don't forget, these teams are not only across each other from the actual build battle itself, they can see each other physically across the stage that they're playing, okay? So they can see the speed that people are building on both sides and how it's going for them. I really like the blue stained approach. It's different from the normal approach, right? Very creative. We can actually see, I think that's the Lady of the Lake, a sort of statue that's very grand, right? There's a lot of size and space being utilized for this on the side of the Maerdy miners. So that's looking very, very, very effective. As I mentioned at the start of this build battle, I said we're probably going to see a lot of symbolism. It looks like one team's gone down that route.
Yes,
right?
yeah. Straight for the big statue, right?
Yes.
Like this is the Lady of the Lake and more of a homestead. Very similar, actually, to what we saw earlier on I think the first build that we broadcast today, where it was of Rhiannon herself, right? Like where this is her and where she's from, and this is obviously the Lady of the Lake's farmstead, and obviously using that big statue of the Lady of the Lake to represent that. Whereas, we're seeing the Maes miners are maybe focusing more on the glacial lake itself, right? And that's why we're seeing all of this structure here. What I am noticing is the builds are looking not quite as complete and full at this stage that we've been seeing previously. But I think that's just been down to the level of detail that they're actually going into very, very early on here. Now, what you don't want, right, is to end up feeling rushed towards the end. Absolutely. You still want to incorporate your redstone element. You still want all of your detail in there. But there's so much detail going on already that I think they should be quite happy with how this has gone so far.
And it's actually ironic that you've just mentioned redstone, because as we zoom in on the Maerdy miners, we can actually see they've run a strip of redstone with repeaters to extend the pulse of the redstone over several dispensers, right? We can imagine what that's for. We've seen it plenty of times already.
Yeah.
There's some fireworks on the way on the sides of the Maerdy miners. Again, maybe trying to capture that fantastical sort of elements.
Oh, right. So we have another interview today. What's your name?
Name's Bailey.
Name's Bailey. What team are you playing for today?
Maerdy miners.
Maerdy miners. Right. So we had a chance to look at your builds and how they've been going so far. What I want to ask is, how does the process go for you guys? Do you have a team leader who just decides and sort of directs you guys around?
We all look at what we have in our specialties.
Yeah.
Put our specialties together to get the best of our ability in our building. We also make like a plan who's doing what, so everything's organised on the day and we know what we're doing. So it sets us up for more chance to win.
Oh, brilliant. And obviously the topic of the Lady of Lake you've been given today, is there anything you found from your researchers that has really helped you today? Is there anything new that you've decided to add to your build?
We figured out, well, we were like this technical research, and while we were playing Minecraft, we were practicing. We figured out if you put a jukebox on top of like paradise, it makes it like kind of magical sounding.
Okay.
Which really helped us because we noticed people with other builds didn't have like music in it.
Yeah.
It would be like a nice touch, but they can also be like good for detail and texture.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, no, really nice to have a way of distinguishing yourselves, right, and making yourselves feel good. So last thing I've got is, you feeling confident? Do you think you're going through to the next round?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow, absolutely. Well, the gauntlet's been thrown out. Thanks very much. I'll let you get back to your team, Bailey.
Right.
Well, that's a hell of a lot of confidence coming out there, but yeah, why not? Be confident.
Yeah, the fact that Bailey just mentioned from the Maerdy Miners, thank you very much, Bailey, again, for coming over to chat to us. The fact that they've talked about the experience that they want to create, right?
Yes.
When it comes to their build battle, they want to use note blocks and place the packed ice or ice block below it to change the tune that comes out. That's some very niche knowledge, okay?
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact that they're considering that in their builds and trying to create this overall experience is truly a representative of how much attention to detail they're showing for their build.
I think you touched on it perfectly, right? Making the build an experience, right? You're not meant to look at this like a picture. You're meant to go through it and really see all of the details, feel the atmosphere that's being created, and using music like they've identified as being something unique to them. That's really, really interesting. I think that's something that the judges are absolutely going to love. And I mean, have you seen that before, Leon? Have you judged a team that's actually had like music incorporated before?
I have judged teams that have utilized redstone to create some moving contraptions.
Yeah.
I've had some teams also just get the music disc and the jukebox and make it as like a background.
Like an atmosphere track, yeah.
Exactly. But I haven't had a team yet. Again, we're seeing some new techniques and decisions coming out at this sort of leading up to the finals in the Principality Stadium. I've never had a team decide to use note blocks, sorry.
Yes.
And change the tune that's coming out, right?
Yes.
That is very difficult to achieve, one. The fact that they have that niche knowledge is impressive. We can actually see that they've created a redstone clock. It's actually based at the sort of foot of the statue of the Lady of the Lake, right? You can see it's a redstone clock that goes around, and that's going to be triggering something consistently at a certain sort of repetition, right?
Right, yeah.
Maybe perhaps to create a beat. They've just gone back and also talked about the music element they're trying to add, the experience. So who knows what's going to happen there. But the fact they know how to create a redstone clock, by the way, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
It's blowing my mind, you know. I was an early adopter of Minecraft. I remember playing back in 2013 and everything, and really, you know, just trying my own things with redstone. Never worked well. You can actually see there's the note block down there, I believe. So that looks like that's where they're going to look to have that base. Again, front and center of the piece. So I think, well, obviously the Lady of the Lake is the true jewel of this piece. They are definitely making it more of an experience. But wow, we take a couple of minutes away from the Mice Miners, and this has really exploded to life as well. We're seeing again this cherry blossom style wedding, almost procession going on. They've got some blocks over there made to look like pews as well coming through. So a lot of really nice ideas going on here.
The thing that I really like here, by the way, to represent Lady of the Lake, they've got a armor stand.
Yeah.
Dressed out, and it looks like chainmail and various sort of armor, maybe some leather involved as well, to represent the Lady of the Lake down to scale, right? We've got actually complete different approaches here. One side, we've gone for a much larger approach, right? And on the other side, we've gone for a very tiny little to-scale sort of character, the Lady of the Lake, right?
Yes, yeah.
With that snow ring around her with ice sort of forming. It looks like they've actually included some white stained glass as well. Maybe that's some sort of like magical cold air surrounding it, right?
Yes, yeah.
Also, that build, that little structure in the corner of the build battle, they've actually utilized a very hard block. Now, I've judged, I think both of these teams lead up to this.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of block pallets and block diversity. They've used mud blocks and dirt to create the walls of this build.
Yeah. We discussed how it didn't really look livable, right? It didn't look like a house yet, but the fact they've outlined it like you would a real build almost, right? Like they've used the wooden logs, they've shaved the wooden logs, and then actually filled it up with these mud bricks, like you say. Again, touching back to this old Celtic style build, right? That if you actually visit, some of the old builds that we've had in the past from the Celtic huts and everything, they were built with just mud and sticks, basically. So actually using that like this, I think that's so impressive. But such a cool idea.
It's a lovely nod to Welsh heritage, right?
Absolutely.
You can actually see further back as well. It looks like they have either a little archway, maybe a bridge, or a little sort of well leading towards the lake, right? That has a thatch roof using wheat blocks on top of a, again, very informed wooden structure that looks like it could actually uphold something like this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The attention to detail on the Maes miners and the Maerdy miners in this, I think that's what's shining through, right? A lot of the builds we've seen so far are very, very cohesive. They come together very well in the end. The fact that you mentioned earlier, this to be plodding along a little bit slower in comparison to previous builds.
Oh wow! Did you see that up there?
I didn't know. I looked away for a second.
That's really cool. They have a real fancy structure going on there. I definitely want to look at that. Yeah, up in the sky.
Wow.
Above and beyond her as well. That's really cool. I hope we get to see that when it's complete.
On the side of the judging, right? For that size and scale, that's something that will really, really boost some points, right? Naturally, of course, you're using a lot more of the vertical spaces available to you. Also, we're coming up into the last 5 minutes. We've noticed some common characteristics, right? We've definitely seen a chapel on both sides, right? We can see the sort of finishing touches on the Maes miners being created here.
Yeah.
But Maerdy miners created theirs very early on.
Yeah.
So the story and the things that are relevant to the theme are shining through on both of them from the get-go, by the way.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, like you said, they both... What I think is really interesting, they've both gone for this similar theme, like you say, where the centerpiece is that lady in the lake.
Of course.
One team, though, has opted to go for this gigantic scale statue with like a real monument, right? The other one, like I said, just a small knight armor. It's two very different interpretations of it, but both of them absolutely have their merits. You see it there, and for there is the Lady of the Lake in all of her glory. You see the note block there spinning, playing some kind of tune. We can't actually hear it on our side, but I wonder actually, I think that the stream might be able to hear that from this distance. Yeah, hopefully you can actually catch.
One thing that I've noticed though, we have those full stone block, like originally it was a half slab block, right?
Yes.
Obviously, more recent updates to Minecraft have brought out the actual stone blocks, or very smooth stone texture, right? That's what we're seeing in the little structure. I'm curious to know what that structure represents. We can see on the roof, actually, they've textured it with little tables inside of item frames.
Wow.
Again, these two teams, the attention to detail is incredible. Incredible. Now, as lovely as I personally love the redstone clock here, they do get awarded points for hiding it.
Yes.
I'm curious to know if they'll put this in a shack at some point or create some sort of structure around it. If not, that's up to the judges to decide, right?
Yes.
I'm a fan of seeing the redstone timers. I think it's actually a great idea to show your knowledge. A redstone clock is very advanced, right? That's automatic redstone at that point. You can see all the fireworks, though, they've actually hidden under ridges of a terraform build, but they've actually allowed the judges to still see it from a side view. Almost like a slice of a cake.
Yes. So you can see the work that's gone into it without it disturbing, like you say, the main structure. Slice of cake is perfect way of describing it. And there we go, in its action of lighting up right there. And yeah, like you say, we can see it from our perspective and how, the slice of cake, perfect analogy of it there. But when you are looking at that build and you're experiencing this build, you won't have to see any of that, right? But you can inspect it to really see the expertise going on there.
Absolutely.
Last couple of minutes, I hope they can finally getting to put their last finishing touches on. But the fireworks seem to be celebration, right? The Maerdy miners seem happy with what they put out.
From what I can see, the frequency of these fireworks being shot, it looks like they've hooked this up to the automatic redstone timer.
Oh.
They've managed to run it along the repeaters, right? The colors they've selected, Welsh colors, of course.
Yeah.
Red, white, and green. Cymru, right? We love to see it. We also see the finished version of the Lady of the Lake statue standing there, representative. And then there we go. We get a nice little sort of snapshot of the red love heart, very 3D, with a bunch of lanterns attached to it. So this is set up, right? This is going to be very visible for the judges to see up in the sky, right?
Yeah. And
it's talking, it's referencing that whole element of love, the marriage, right?
Yes.
Obviously, there was a bitter turn in this particular
it's like a lost
story.
love, right? And I think that's the heart that was almost leaving the Lady of the Lake, right? She almost looks upset, and as much as it's hard to, facial expressions and emotion through Minecraft, I'm seeing it, right? I'm seeing what these players are going for there. I really like the way that they've expressed that. Yeah, she's looking up at it there. That looks incredible.
There's rose bushes on that as well. Of course,
phenomenal.
very commonly associated with love, right?
Yeah.
These are quite large rose bushes, but they look incredible. It's a lovely attention to detail. I think one thing that's going to be very hard for these judges, right? There's so many minor things. This might be one of the longer or build battles to judge between the two builds itself.
Yes, yeah. I'm just impressed with the quality all day, right? All of these builds have been so unique and so interesting, right? And the way that they've come about so naturally. We saw again, this build looked like a slower build, right? It looked like it was really taking time. If you look at it now, you wouldn't say that at all, right? You wouldn't say that it took some time to get you. It looks incredible the way they've come out, and it's so close between the two of them, as much as the scale of the Maerdy Minus, right? If you look at it this way, left and right, it looks so much bigger, but there is a lot of detail in the Maes Minus too.
Different teams will win different categories. There's 6 overall, and each category breaks down into different sections of points, right? They're not even.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for a team to actually draw. Different teams you can have both teams take 3 categories each, but some categories might award 4 points overall.
Of course.
On the side of the Maes Miners, it's very clear to see that the variance of the textures of blocks, the block palette, is dominating. Okay?
Yes.
We saw it from the get-go with the moss blocks, to be honest with you, right? That was a good sort of key insight to what we were expecting later on. But the Maerdy Miners, the redstone automatic blocks and the scale, right? They'll probably be taking category 3 and 5. Again, we can't say this. We're not the judges. It's not up for us to decide. However, obviously, we can see a very informed what teams have prioritized in their build as well. And one thing I'd like to note as well, again, I mentioned earlier, some common characteristics between the two. We see some emphasis on the Lady of the Lake. One is a lot more environment-based, right? What she does to the local surroundings. On the other side, she is quite literally the symbol, the center point, right? Both sides actually have a potion, and we're coming down
to
the final countdown for the battle.
Happy new build, I guess.
Well done to both teams on that. Obviously, on our side, it's catching up, wrapping up. But Judas, I would like to know your opinion on these two different approaches. I feel like the teamwork from both teams was actually quite similar in this scenario.
Yes.
They both sort of had dedicated specialists, right? We're seeing that terminology pop up a lot today. A specialist who are working on exclusively the redstone. They might be really good at building large characters or structures or statues, right? Or someone might be the building expert for particular structures or builds. How are you feeling, despite the teamwork or structure from our point of view being the same, with the outcomes that they've had? Very different, of course.
It's completely different, right? And I think the way that the teams are going about doing it is clearly like what suits them, right? We saw when we had one of the Maerdy Miners come up and talk to us, they knew what they wanted. They were very confident going into it, and I think that's why you see them going for these very large structures, right? They want big and impactful and really, grab your attention in your face style, right? And it's an approach that it scores you some very easy points, right? You look at that and you go, wow, that big statue of the Lady Lake, very incredible, right? But again, it's a tough call because of the way that when you see on the other side, you've got a very tight, detailed composition coming out instead. It really does come down to judges' opinions, right? And so again, both teams look really good. If either of them made it to the final, I'm sure they have an impressive build there too.
I think that's one of the game's examples where the teams know the scoring favorite, right? They know what they can earn points with. It's very intentful with what they've done and where they've done it. Right? That's very clear for us. We've actually got the next two teams. If Julius, you want to read it off?
Yeah, we have LLGTC Scourge versus Treorchy Miners coming up next. So we'll find out what they've got cooking up. Again, we'll head to a short break, get us set up, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back really soon.
See you in a bit.
Yeah.
to utilize in the process of the group stages. Now, again, we have a running theme in a couple of these different build battle themes to date, right? Yep. Theme on theme action. We have another element of love in the core this, right? There's some consistent iconography with it. We already identified that we might be looking at a cathedral, right?
Yes.
On one side on the red team. I'm assuming that's representative of potentially marriage in some form again. And oh my lord, we look away for a second and we've got an animated redstone loop. This might be a reference to some form of like magical, whimsical sort of energy again. We've seen that pop up quite often. Yeah. This sort of Welsh folklore theme, right? I'm quite curious though. Love is definitely an element when it comes to this particular theme, right? However, how are they going to capture that mountainous element without literally building a mountain, right?
Yeah.
And also, bravery is also pretty crucial to my knowledge of this theme as well. How do you visualize something like bravery?
Yeah, bravery through Minecraft, right? You know, I know one of the things that's come up is the fact that she would live in the lands with the wild animals, right? I think that's why you're seeing that rabbit coming through as well. And I would expect to see some more of that. I like the choice to build a rabbit statue rather than just placing some rabbits around, right?
Yes.
I think the way that you can frame this again is more of a freeze frame, more of a representation of Pennant Millenget herself. I think that's a really nice way to do that, and it looks like we might even be seeing some more from Scourge over there. That looks to be some other kind of statue coming up, and yeah, a nice way to do this.
That might be the lady in question herself with her gorgeous autumn wavy hair.
Yeah.
I think that's either her shoes. She might be wearing slippers. We don't know yet. However, I can very clearly see that's some legs being constructed, right? It looks like on the side of Scourge, we've talked about intense scale in a lot of these builds, right? This looks like we're having some intentional scale in both teams, right? The cathedral element is very much so representative of that love, right? It's a physical, if you were to choose a building to embody that sort of essence, that's the building I would choose.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And on the side of the Scourge, again, we've gone for a lot larger in scale. They're really trying to dominate that point, that category for area, use, and size, right?
Yes.
It's intentional. We can clearly see that there's an emphasis on this. They're trying to bring attention to it. It looks like the legs have actually been done on our character that I'm not going to try and pronounce because I will absolutely butcher it. But that is looking fantastic. Over on Treorchy's side, though, they've already started considering the environment, right? They've started doing some landscaping. They've got the trees being built up, etc. They have some bushes, some grass being built. It looks like they actually have a variance in texture of the actual cathedral wall itself as well.
Yes.
I can't tell if that's vines from where I'm looking over here or if that's actually mossy cobble again or mossy stone bricks. But they've actually hidden it behind some leaves, which makes some contextual knowledge. If you put a tree next to a building, of course, it's going to get some foliage on it as well. That's very nice. I'm quite curious about this little lake that's been included with the boat. Obviously, we only have a little brief version of the build theme.
Yes.
Their research has evidently informed something that is included in it.
So I like the way that they've gone for, again, like I said, this building style, but now they're almost deconstructing it, right? They built it up, this very solid cathedral, had all that texture added, and now I'm not quite sure what's going on with that center top of the tower there, but they almost used it as something to start with, and now they're looking to, like I said, deconstruct it to change things up a bit as well. From the green team, is that right? Okay, so we have some people over here from Scourge here, so we're just going to pass over and see what's going on, yeah? All right, who would like to go first? All right, come on over. What's your name?
I'm Kian.
Yeah.
And we are from LLGTC Scourge, Llangatug, Neath Talbot.
All right, fantastic. We just want to ask, are you happy with the prompt that you got? Obviously, you didn't know which one you were going to get today. Is this the one you would have picked?
Yes, because in our practice, we picked Pennant Millenget because we didn't know that we were doing the mix. So when we pulled that, we were very happy.
Oh, really happy with that. With your team, how do you structure like how you decide to go about things? Do you have a team leader who directs you around, or do you kind of come together and see what can work out?
So basically, we have like different roles. So
We've got builders, we have people doing textures, we have me, the coach leader, managers, shoutcasters, where they all have different jobs, like some building, some people doing research, some people giving ideas, and it's like everyone does a part in it.
She didn't even say your name.
Oh yeah, this is Alexis, everyone. Also from the same school. So excited to tell us about the build. Couldn't even introduce themselves yet, but no, it's a really exciting time.
Yeah. And we've taken the pros and cons and people's abilities and used that to our advantage in the build. Because we have some people who are really good at texturing, so they're doing the texturing. People are good at flags, they're doing flags. So we tried to use the pros and cons of everybody's abilities.
Brilliant. And so have you got something about the theme you want to talk about?
Do you want to, I was going to say about what the build is actually based off?
Oh, go for it.
So basically the build is based off the part of the story when Prince Llewellyn, can't say that last time, Powers was hunting hares with his hunting dogs, chased one into the undergrowth where they found Merlin praying the hare took refuge under her robe. Because she basically saved them all.
Can't you shout out a grandfather?
Go ahead.
Shout out.
Oh,
Shout out.
we're absolutely here for shout outs. Go ahead, give a shout out, Alex.
Watching.
Go ahead, give a shout out.
Hi, Dad. Hi, Bumpy.
Brilliant. Right, we'll let you guys get back to your teams, but best of luck for this one. Complete different personalities.
Yeah,
all the people we brought up with today. It's really good fun to meet all these guys and see what they're coming up with.
Absolutely. It's lovely to have a shout out on the stream as well. It makes it feel like a proper experience, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Judas, you had on this side a lot more information from them as well. We actually have somebody from Treorchy Comp side now coming to talk to us about their side of the build.
Yeah, come on over. What's your name?
Charlie.
Charlie, all right, and you're from Treorchy on this team today. So we got to talk to some of the other teams as well. What have you been thinking about this theme today? Is this the theme that you would have liked to have from these 3 picks?
You're not sure, yeah?
I didn't really know that these would be the theme till today.
Okay, no, so you've come in today, not with a plan, but you've more working on it on the day. So with your team, how do you come about coming up with that idea? Do you have someone in charge directing you guys?
No, not really.
It's more of a team group effort, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
It's like a team thinking effort.
Good. So when you have your 5-minute startup time, it was more discussing the theme and what you wanted to build from that, is it? So what was most important? What did you guys find was the most important part of the build? What do you really want to like for the judges?
Maybe like the texture and maybe the mountain scenery we are going to add into it.
Oh, really good. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that, okay, from our point of view. We'll make sure we look at the textures and the mountains, everything. Have you got anything you'd like to say before we send you back to your team?
No.
All business is Charlie. Oh, yeah, right. We'll let you get back to your team. Thanks for talking to us. All right. Again, totally different personalities. Really cool. Really good fun.
So I've actually had the luxury of judging a build battle between Treorchy Comp and some other schools, right? Charlie's actually stepped up several times. I know the team strategy is a very across the board, right? There's not one person that leads. It is a purely communal effort the entire way across. However, I've never met the team over on the Scourge side, right? It's quite interesting that they mentioned they've already identified all of their team's weaknesses, right?
Yes.
That's a very, very keen sort of insight to how they've structured their team. And they said, hey, we understand that some people aren't particularly good at this element or that element of the build battle, but they're really good at this field, right?
Yes.
So we've let people dominate in their respective fields, and we'll believe they'll come together as a cohesive unit in the end. So again, a very interesting contrast between the two teams. One side truly built on the foundation of community. Also, everyone's informed of their own research, right? And they're also locked in, right?
Oh, yeah.
They are fully focused on what they're developing here. They said that this theme was a little bit more of a struggle for them personally. However, their building abilities is something that will bring them through, right? They have a lot of practice, not necessarily with specific themes, but the actual building elements itself, right?
Yeah.
That shines through the cathedral that we can see popping up on this side, right?
Yeah.
But over on the Scourge side, however, like we said, they've gone with a lot more intent in scale.
Yeah.
You had a lot more of an opportunity to speak to them. I could just barely hear them. If you want to share a little bit more insight on what they're doing and their approach.
So what they were thinking is they were really happy, funnily enough, that they got to get this theme, because it's what they were hoping for. Because they feel like it suits them, right? Like we touched on the fact that they've got their certain skill sets, they've identified weaknesses and how they want to do it. And with the way that this build is almost multiple stripes, almost laid out in some format. You see, there's some kind of animal, looks like it's being built over there. I'm not sure if that's a dog or a rat just yet. I'm sure a wolf. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that. It'll really come together. You find structure more like this, right? More statues that are icons in particular. Yeah. They really come together at the very end. The build process can be a little bit tough to get right. Now, they do only have just over 5 minutes left, right? I hope they can feel like they are comfortable with the stage that they're at, because having a half-built structure will definitely lose you some points with the judges. Without a doubt. But when you finish it off, it really looks good. Yeah.
And on the note of block palette, right, we're talking about how they can earn points. Again, intentional scale, very easy for them to dominate in that category here, right? Though the cathedral is equally as large.
Yes.
So maybe not so easy for the judges in this sort of case scenario, right? However, block palette, wise, right? We're looking at the wolf, this sort of dog-based character or creature, and I can see dripstone, a very textured, very difficult block to use when it comes to creating stuff. That's looking great. A lot of prismarine used as well. It's looking fantastic on that side. Over here, though, this has been hidden from our point of view the entire time. The observer has revealed to us the fact that they've actually intentionally used a variance in sort of terrain, right?
Yes.
We're in the Bracken Beacons, I believe, are we not?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it was.
Or we're in a mountainous range.
Sorry, yes, this was the one which you fled from Ireland.
Yes.
And obviously spending the time with the animals as well, that's a big deal. And the fact they've mentioned that she would sleep upon a bare rock. Now, interesting to note, when I hear the term sleep upon a bare rock, I am thinking, just a stone out in the open. But the idea of putting it within a cathedral is actually pretty simple as well. She might not have a bed within there, right? It might just be you sleep on the bare rock, but at least thought ahead to build some shelter around you too.
Absolutely.
So I like this. I think it works as like a bit of a hiding spot as well. This isn't exactly where you'd look for someone who's fled from Ireland. So and just it just looks fantastic, right?
It does.
If you were to walk around your Minecraft world and you saw this there, you'd dump whatever stuff you had at your house and you come live here instead. It looks phenomenal.
Right, we've just seen the stained glass put in the cathedral, right? A very common characteristic of such a building, right? They've gone with the Welsh flag theme. Love that from them, right? The green, red, and white, of course, being Cymru, Wales. However, I've just realized, it's just clocked for me. Treorchy, right? The side of Scourge, they've gone for a very symbolic representation, right? It's quite literally in your face, front and center, nice and large for you to see, okay? They're taking certain inserts of the theme and they're representing that visually stunning, right? On the side of Treorchy, they have actually prioritized the narrative. This little lake with the boat is our character in this particular theme traveling from Ireland.
You're totally right. Yeah,
I've just realized.
So she was due to be married, right?
Yes.
That's why there's the cathedral there. And no, she's actually leaving to head to Wales, actually.
With that realization, it all clicks.
That really clicks into place. Again, this is what we were talking about, the options with your build. You can either choose to represent the story or just tell a snapshot from the story. And this is a genius idea. Especially, I have to touch on the fact that Charlie came over and mentioned they didn't know much about this theme heading into it. They just kind of came up with the idea on the spot. To come up with this
as an outcome
with 5 minutes of notice, that is incredible. And to pull it off the way they had as well, I love this idea for a build. I think
that
it's really cool.
At this point is a nod, it's a testimony to the team at Treorchy, right?
Yes.
They clearly have some very, very advanced builders. The fact that they can be given essentially a theme on the day without prior research and have the limited knowledge, the research research they've just sort of gathered ahead of time to create an outcome like this that is quite literally a representation of the journey at different stages, right? But also, of course, as we mentioned, right, love and bravery is a dominant theme in this, right? We can see this in their outcome.
Yeah.
And talking about all the animals and whatnot as well, we can just about see it inside the lake. They have all sorts of fish, salmon, etc., cod as well. Obviously, they would travel in the journey, going from Ireland to Wales. And the boat as well, it's not this grand boat either.
No, yes.
It's something that feels like you would quickly get on in a hurry.
Yes, yeah. The attention to detail in this is really nice. And again, we've just been shocked by the outcome of it. I think that's actually taking an interpretation of the theme that probably most people wouldn't think of, right? I certainly, it took us 10, 15 minutes to figure out what was going on. But the judges there, they will clock on to this immediately and really respect the idea there, like kind of catching a judge by surprise. It's a great way to get some points to it. And it's also relevant, right? We were wondering how the cathedral was going to make its way into it, the boat and the lake and everything. And they've tied this up in a really nice, neat little bow. And with a final minute coming through now, you'd have to hope they're happy with the finishing touches.
Yes, so as you mentioned, the last minute is left. One thing I want to touch base on is I haven't particularly seen any redstone from the side of Treorchy. It might be that well hidden.
Yes, that's true.
Right? However, obviously, if we pan out for the last 30 seconds of the build battle, we can see on the side of Scourge, they made this halo ring very early on.
Yes.
And they've got all sorts of different characters that might represent different parts of the journey, right? The bunnies being the animals that's along the way, right?
You can see the bare stone there, actually, I think, just below the tree.
On. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's very symbolic. Like you said, it's statues to represent snapshots of it rather than go for a almost movie scene type thing, right?
Yeah.
This is a build with a full representation as well, and I really like how they've gone for that. I think there's tons of it, and time is up, but hopefully both of these teams are happy with the outcomes they produced.
Absolutely. We can see some intentful light used as well on both sides through the beacon, which is more a niche sort of use of lighting, very creative, right?
Yes.
They've actually applied a different colored stained glass to, of course, change the color of the beacon, right? Again, niche knowledge.
Yes.
That is used very tastefully, not overused, that has come out with a very effective result. I'm actually a big fan of the stained glass usage, not just on the beacons, of course, as I just mentioned. The Treorchy side, we saw them put in the stained glass at the top of the tower, but along the windows as well of the cathedral. It's also alternating the Welsh flag, as well as, of course, green and white being Irish as well.
Yes, yeah. I was wondering, I mentioned at the start, will anyone incorporate the Irish heritage of it? And yes, they did. In fact, actually, their build effectively took place in Ireland with the way that it was
the narrative.
From the cathedral there. I really like how they did that, and again, completely different styles of build, like kind of how you want to represent snapshots or the theme as a whole. I loved it. I really enjoyed what we got to see.
Yeah, I think that's the first build we've seen today that has taken a very different creative approach. Right?
Yes.
I think it was the problem solving that they had the theme pop up last second, where they had to have a different outcome as a result, right? They went the narrative route. I'd love to see more teams do that. That was very effective in the final result, but I think it's very hard for the judges to decide between both teams there.
All right, I think we're about to find out our final semi-final of the day. I think it's going to be Trinity Fields versus Woodlands, and we're just waiting to find out the theme coming through here as well. But after this, it's knockout time, right? It's the final semi-finals, and then we'll actually be finding out who has won all of the previous rounds too. We'll get to go through a little list and run through which teams came out on top. And it's just been such a really interesting day with so many different things on show.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Likewise, Caston, but also we've had an absolute treat with the build battles that we've witnessed today, right? Unfortunately, we didn't manage to capture the first one, but as you mentioned, the first one was equally as effective.
Oh, yeah, just like the rest.
Yes, and that is incredible. That is a testament to the skill level of the people who have managed to make it through the group stages, leading up today through the Hub Cymru build battles, leading up to this obviously Principality finals. So
it looks like we're just taking a moment to get everything set up for the next game. But I believe it will be Trinity Fields against Woodlands. We'll let you know the theme of that once we find out. But we're going to head for a short break, and again, be back for some more builds.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So again, completely different interpretations. We were discussing at the start of how limited this topic is and how you are going to end up with something very similar, but they've gone about it in completely different ways.
Now, one thing I'd like to note is both horse heads are actually facing towards the wall.
Yep.
That is for setting up the build battle itself, right? Obviously, it's how you start the build battle with all the spectators, etc. So we've actually been seeing a behind sort of version of the horses, right?
Yeah.
As our observer just did a circle around both Trinity Fields and Woodlands, I must say that the Trinity Fields horse skull from the side that is actually facing is stunning, right? It is stunning. It looks very horse-like. I don't know how they've managed to capture that horse sort of feeling in just a skull, but that is incredible. On the side of the Woodlands, however, though, I think they've got a very literal portrayal, right? We had to look at a couple of reference images just on Google just before we also jumped back into this cast, and they had this sort of like gown attached to the head of the horse skull. We can very clearly see that Woodlands has been very much so inspired in that sense as well, right? They've got a very festive, literal sort of representation of it. I think, as you mentioned as well, we've got a bit of narrative included, right? I saw a fantastic narrative representation in the last build battle just before the intermission break. In this case, we've got actually on the side of Trinity Fields, if they're building the houses, it's a nod to the sort of folklore and the story that you've just described for myself and the audience at home. I would like to note as well, on the side of Trinity, they have finished the skull, right? It was one of the first things that they made. It was built into the base plate. Obviously, on the side of Woodlands, they brought it up more front and center, right? They thought a little bit more, perhaps, about its presentation. But on the side of Trinity, they've actually started mixing in some texture of diorite. This is a very grungy, textured block, right? It is predominantly white, it has a lot of gray in it. It's a very stony, scaly sort of texture. And that feels really, really well used in the mixture between the quartz that they already have for the horse skull on Trinity Fields. They've also, of course, included some sea lanterns, right? One of the lighter, or lighter in terms of shade, actual color-wise, or hue, I guess, of the light blocks that you can use in the game, right? Compared to just decorated with a bunch of torches or lanterns, right? So again, a lot of intent behind it. However, the Woodlands, a lot of emphasis on this skull, right? They know that this represents the theme, right? It is the most likely the conclusive representation you could find when researching such a topic. However, on the side of Trinity, I'm starting to see a lot more characteristics show through. As someone who is a lot more informed on this particular theme of Mary Lloyd, is there anything that you personally recognize?
I think what they're going for there, so we can see this sort of red, white, and a little bit of green structure coming out. I believe this is more of the Christmas theme coming in here. That's what it's telling me. It's actually turning more and more red as I speak, so now I'm not so sure. But yeah, there is something going on there that I'd like to get a closer look at when it's finished off. But yeah, at the moment, I think I might be. It could also be a Welsh dragon representation as well.
Of course,
it's a bit hard to tell. Maybe even you see sort of angle they go for. That might be the stick. They might be trying to incorporate now, like almost a disassembled Mary Lloyd.
I see.
To consider where it might have come from as well. So I'm interested to see on when they actually finish that off, on how that turns out, because you see some of the red now starting to go around the Mary Lloyd skull itself on the side of Trinity Fields. You see the red and green there. Again, this is more of a Christmas theme, I think, coming through there.
I think that's like almost like tinsel in a sense, right? They've got terracotta, I believe that block, right? A very saturated block, very colorful, great for festive-based things, right? They've got a bit of tinsel going over the horse skull that they've created. Maybe bring a little bit of highlight to it, right? It's definitely drawing my eyes over there, very saturated in a sense. I'd also like to mention that on the scoring rubric, right, how they gain points or potentially lose points when it comes to the judges. One thing they have to consider is the environment, and you can see over here on the Woodlands, though this is very much so front and center, beautiful scale use, right? Very well textured with the gown coming down. They even got like a little sort of floral crown at the top, right? Again, we saw that on our reference images, but they've actually considered the surrounding environment, right? Maybe not contextually to scale, but it's still considered. And again, over here, Trinity actually built the skull into the environment in the first place, right?
Yes.
So one's included or inserted, one is involved from the get-go, right?
There's that structure coming out. It looks like they've almost come to a redesign for that. But yeah, I am starting to think that it's more of the staff that the head will rest on, almost with that tinsel coming around it. Again, I think it's a more of a disassembled Mario, but they've done such a good job with the skull at the start, right? They wanted to get that on the page, basically, and get it up in action right away. And I also quite like the cherry blossom tree. Like we said, it exploded out wide and it's actually encroaching outside of the build area. I almost like that as a Mary Lloyd thing, where it sort of breaks the rules, right? You're not supposed to just knock on people's doors and steal their food. It's very Mary Lloyd to me to just say, oh, it breaks out of the wall and we don't care. You know, we want to show it's a very naughty style of build, you know, and I would like to see them actually keep that. I don't know how the rules state that, and if they actually, because they didn't intentionally build outside of it, right?
It's the beauty of working with the organics of Minecraft.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
You can't really control what's going to come. You can tailor it, right? We saw one team earlier use bone meal on grass and they removed all the red flowers, right? It's both red and yellow. They intentionally made it just yellow. Maybe it was by design, maybe it's a technique they've used before. Who knows? But it's an organic. It's hard to work with, right? You can see on the side the woodlands in the background, actually. They're trying to double down on the fact that this is festive, right?
Yes.
Winter themed around about the Christmas time, right? They've got all the snow decorated. They've opted for spruce trees as well.
Yes.
Very common for cold climates, right? A lot of thought put behind the decision to utilize that, right? It also looks like they might be including some sort of particle emission underneath. I can't tell if that was them just breaking a lot of blocks consistently. It might be the breaking of blocks, who knows? But you can see over on the side of Trinity Fields, you mentioned you'd like to see that reference to the folklore of knocking the doors of the houses. They're building more houses.
More houses for a village for the Mary Lloyd to be a part of, right? I really like how they've come around to this now.
Yes.
And what I would like to point out as well for Woodlands, so obviously we didn't broadcast this game right from the get-go, right? We took a little bit of time, and actually that's because the Woodlands took a very long time to even begin building. They spent a lot of time discussing it and really wanting to come up with their concept, and I think that's why we're seeing so much attention to detail on things like they've got this gown dressed over the skull, and it looks incredible. It's very realistic. It almost feels like they dropped a cloth of blocks onto its head, right? And dressing it up, putting the snow around. It's deceptively simplistic, right?
Yes.
It does just look like one singular monument, and then they just put some detail on it. But there is a ton of detail in this, and a lot of attention has been paid. So I really like how they've attacked this, again, difficult topic, but they really made it their own.
One thing that I was a little bit concerned about, right, is how do you incorporate redstone in a build like this, right? Woodlands has literally provided the answer to us immediately. The eyes of the skull bring in attention to such a focal point, right? They have lit it up with redstone lamps. I'm assuming there's redstone blocks behind it, so it may not necessarily be some form of a contraption. However, it's accessible by the inside, completely invisible to us and the judges, of course, which would be awarding them some points. The use of snow, they've actually layered different layers to get different variants and texture in the ground. This is very unique, right? Snow is very effective for this. It's one of the few blocks that you can actually get different height levels on it as well. So a very effective build when it comes to that. And I love the fact, again, you can see it more here. Stone blocks mixed with quartz, very effective, slight different textures and hues. Also, the actual stake that it stands on, the wood, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one type of texture. They've used different shades, different textures to achieve it. You can, of course, go simplistic with something like this, right? I would like to query you, Judas, okay?
Yep.
Obviously, we've been bringing emphasis on the fact that we're in the Principality Stadium.
Yep.
People get to play in the esports arena, right? The Minecraft esports Cymru battle arena. However, they can see each other across the stage and they can see each other's builds. I think that they're building up that structure to match the scale on the other side.
Yes. I think you're right. I think they've recognized the situation where they are disadvantaged on scale there. So trying to recover quickly and so, like we mentioned, could you peek over to the other side to see what they're doing? And I think that's exactly what they've done to contend on that scale scoring area. Yeah, so I really like that. I do believe now we're going to be finding out the finalists that we will be seeing today, whether we'll find out their theme as well. just getting a little bit of info. Okay, so we have Cynon Valley Coalition versus the CAVC Celts coming up here. So that will be the first of our finalists. However, this is the post-16 final.
Yes.
So there was no qualification semi-final today. This will be the first time that we are seeing both of these teams. But what's very important for this competition compared to the other ones we've seen today is the themes. Up until now, the teams had gotten to see the themes in advance, but didn't know which one they were going to do. For the finals, you find out the theme right here and now. You have no idea up until now, even if you're in the final. First, you find out you're in the final, and then you find out what you are building. It is really a tough test of skill, but I think that's where we'll see the really strong team shine through.
Yeah. It's a good approach to show a team's actual skill in terms of their organization, their teamwork, right? How they can take a challenge that's been presented to them heads on right now. I think we might actually have a sneak peek at what the theme is.
Maybe.
I'm not too sure.
We might, but I don't believe we're going to reveal it just yet.
That's perfectly fine. One thing I want to note, though, is post-16, they're older, right?
Yes.
They're more experienced, as you can imagine. I, myself, have been playing Minecraft for over 10 years now.
Oh, you're post-16?
Right? I am post-16.
Believe it or not, I'm also post-16.
Yeah, really? That's a surprise. But when it comes to that, right, I kind of want to see that experience shine through. Are they going to be more efficient? Or are they going to have more creative approaches? Is it more niche knowledge that they might be able to utilize? Or is it the young ones that we've seen today so far that actually have that more hands-on experience, right? Maybe that's their main game of choice. As you grow up, you might be varying your sort of selection, of course. So I'm really curious to see the difference.
All right. Have had the topic revealed for the next game. It is shaped by steel, based on the Welsh steel industry. Tons of things we can do with this. A very, very open topic. So we'll see how these teams tackle this after we go for a short break, get everything set up, and then it's first finals of the day.
Yes, sir.
for, like you said, the simple approach, but it's only simple, right, if you pull it off. And the way they've gone for it, and it looks to be at the moment, it's only the Cynru Valley Coalition have actually gone for that. The CAVC Celts are going for a slightly different style. So, what it might have seemed obvious at first, if it's not obvious to both teams, it ends up being unique. But what I would like to touch on, unique to the new setup that we've got for in this Principality Stadium rebuild going on, is they are very, very close to each other right now. You are within touching distance of each other, so you're gonna, whether you want to or not, you are gonna have to see what the other team is building, how far along they are progressed at the moment, and that could be something that either throws you off or maybe gives you some confidence too. But it's definitely a change up to what we've had previously, where you could just kind of ignore the other team and get on with it your own way. You see us there flying right between two factories. It almost could be part of one build. You see them almost having this railway being built. It's functional between the two of them, even though it's two separate builds as well. So definitely a different style and more of a mental game going on here.
And it's so important to note as well, we mentioned earlier, right, this contrast of, you're across from people in the actual physical, real life stage that you're playing on. And of course, you can see the build battle across the same arena as well. Now they're a lot more intimate, a lot more close. We saw the Celts build their railway first, right? The Cynru Valley Coalition then not too long, shortly after, also built it. So it's going to be interesting seeing these finals in this grand battle arena of the Principality Stadium, of how people will be informed by the builds. It's almost going to be a battle of trying to fight against the influence, in a sense, I would argue.
Yeah, like say you are obviously going to have to see the enemy team's build, and you almost don't want that to interrupt what your plan is, right? What your structure is. I know we've had some chance to talk to some of the other teams, right, and about how they've managed to do it. And I'd be interested to hear from someone on one of these teams as well to see how this is affecting them, especially being so close to each other. Like we said, being in person at a LAN event before. Most of these players wouldn't have been at this type of event. So it's definitely a new experience all the way around. And look at this, there's tons going on here.
This is fantastic. They've created some chimneys, right? This is a lovely build technique. One of my favorites personally. They've put a campfire and built around it and hidden it, so it looks like the actual factory has come to life.
Right, yeah, the stacks
it's actually working, right? They can change the height of this campfire by putting a hay block underneath it as well, which will increase the amount of plumes and the frequency of the particle in this case, right? But also, they have already started to consider, both teams, the redstone, right, in terms of railways and tracks. We actually have someone as an interview for a player from one of the teams.
Brilliant. Let's see.
From the green team.
From the green team. So, hello. Would you like to introduce yourself to the stream?
Hello, I am Aaron.
What team do you play for, Aaron?
The green team.
The green team. All right. So obviously you got the prompt today, the Shaped by Steel and all about the steel works in Wales. Is this what you were expecting today, or has this caught you guys off guard?
It's off. It is. We didn't expect this.
All right. So when you did get the prompt revealed to you, how did you then approach how you'd plan and what you were going to build?
We originally only thought of the good of the shaping lives of metal, but now we're thinking of the bad with it.
Okay. I think that's very relevant, right? You can't look at something just with like rose-tinted glasses, right? Looking at the good and the bad is a really nice artistic way of looking at it. But with your team, so you're one of the older age groups we've got here. How have you found the structure of your team? Do you have someone in charge organizing you all?
We're very organized. We've split our team up equally.
Yeah.
Some are working on the roof, some working on the base, and some inside.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, really good way to mix that up. So is there anything here, so I think you can see part of the screen going on here. Is there anything here that you really love about what you've put up so far?
So far, we've managed to make the ground look dead around it. So it's a lot more showing of war and all like that.
Yes, something like that. Oh, that's really cool. So really interesting take on this. I'm going to let you get back to your team, but is there anything you'd like to shout out before you go?
Hope we win.
Hope we win, right? Well, good luck. I hope we have a good time.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's a really nice...
Fighting spirits from the side of the Cynru Valley Coalition.
Really artistic take too, right? Like, they're looking at the dead of the land, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to be given a prompt like this, and yes, obviously the Wolfpack very even currently in the political climate and everything, but having this opinion of, you know, we don't want to ignore certain facets of it. I think that's a really mature way to look at it, you know, and that's what you'd expect from an older age group.
Now, on the side of the Celts, as we just pan back over with the Observer, they've taken a different approach. They've gone for a lot larger sort of plume of smoke, right?
Yes.
Coming out. Cobwebs. If you've played Minecraft for a long time, this was the way to make clouds back in the day, right?
Yeah.
This is a very classic approach. I love this, but also I feel like their tower that they've erected in the background is actually scaling higher vertically.
Yes, that's true. And I did touch on the fact, you know, the Port Talbot Steelworks in particular has some very, very tall towers. You can see them from miles away. You know, especially them being on the coastline. You can just look out to the beach and you can't not look at it, right? It's these very tall towers, very smoky towers like we see. Haven't quite seen that big blue fire on top yet, but I'm hoping someone manages to slot this in there. But yeah, really cool. Or way to just get a couple of extra sneaky points in there, right, on the scale top.
One thing I want to note as well is, I think the block palette on the side of the Celts, I believe, is the red team.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more diverse, to be honest with you. They have some bamboo scaffolding, it looks like. They also have used red terracotta to erect that entirely huge tower off to the side. They've also included deep slate. They've also included blackstone, right? Whereas on the side of the green team, Cynnon Valley Coalition, they have actually gone for quite an interesting use of windows. You can see on the Celts, the red team over on the right side here, they have actually got glass, very traditional, mention of windows. However, Cynnon Valley Coalition, they've gone for iron fences and glass. It's a very lovely iron fences, though it doesn't actually feature glass in it itself. The slight sort of fractured window sort of aesthetic it has makes it seem like a lot smaller panes. Very common for factory sort of buildings, right? So I think the contrast in both is very interesting. I'm going to say that the Cynnon Valley Coalition, I personally see them dominating in the shape. The shape is interesting, right?
Yes.
It's not symmetrical. It's very diverse. They have different varied heights, slopes, the factory main sort of space, right? However, they're dominated in the verticality, right? They've also got some smoke coming out even more from that flume, as I mentioned previously. They've got better block palettes. However, then you can also argue on the side of the Cynnon Valley Coalition, their ground is made of coarse dirt, dirt itself, mud bricks, right? Mud itself. And also, I think they're using the new flower from the Creaking update, which is a very, very modern and niche flower to use.
Yeah, like you said, being up to date and as up to speed as you possibly can be with this is just another way to get some points with the judges, right? We've seen this is the finals. You know, we just spoke to a member of the Cynnon Valley Coalition, and they were said we want to win, right? They're hoping that we win, and that's how you do it, right? You just find ways to get these little bits of points because this is, you know, last 7 minutes. We find ourselves in here. We are, you know, down to the last little bits of detail. This is where you want to start incorporating your redstone, like we've touched on earlier, getting those final details in. But there's plenty of opportunity with redstone here. But with how late in the day it is, you almost don't want to overcomplicate it, right? Because you need to find something that you know is going to work.
You need to keep that cohesive image in mind, right? We mentioned earlier, it's very hard because you're right next to your competition, right?
Yes.
Do you want to see what they're doing and try and influence your own build? Or do you want to try and stick to your guns, stick to your initial plan, and sort of hope in your sort of decision making when it comes to that? We can see a lot of those little details coming in on the side of the Cynnon Valley Coalition, the green team on the right. Inside, they actually have a bunch of lodestones as the flooring. A very niche block again. A lot of diverse blocks across the two teams used in this build. And then the Celts have started using lumberjack, lumber sort of storage, using the rails to go up and over the logs, right? As if it's balanced down, right? A classic when it comes to Minecraft building. The fact that I've seen this today makes my inner builder from many years ago very, very happy. However, we're coming up to the last 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Both teams have the core structure there. The shaped by steel. It can be quite a diverse topic. You can take this in very many different ways, right? The Cynnon Valley Coalition have used some lava very common in steelworks, right? I haven't necessarily seen that on the Celt side.
Yes.
They may have incorporated inside. We, as an observer, can't actually go inside the build.
But you know what's cool, though? And we've been touching on how close you are to each other and how lava is almost a simple option, right? We discussed the roof being a simple option, but yeah, the lava, like you said, is something you'd expect to see, you know, that's a molten steel type of look.
Yes.
The Cynn Valley Coalition have actually built it on the side of their build that the CAVC Celts can't see. So it's you know, we discussed the sort of gamesmanship of this opportunity, and yeah, putting it there on that side, whether intentional or not, has not tipped their hand. So the Celts can't see that and go, oh yeah, we need lava. Someone has to, well, not has to, but ideally you'd like someone to come up with that idea as well. Because again, the molten steel type of thing, again, if you have spent any time nearby Port Talbot Steelworks, you do see molten steel. It glows very, very brightly. You can see it from miles away. And I love the use of the line cut there, transporting the stuff going through. Again, on the side that the Celts can't see as well. So really well thought out here.
That's really interesting. You can see actually the ores inside the little storeroom as well, where the minecart is bringing it back and forth. I don't think that has an actual practical element to it, but you got to remember, this is a build battle.
Yes.
It's about the aesthetics.
Oh,
it's about the visuals, right? And that is a fantastic approach to represent the workings of a steelwork, right?
Yeah.
They have the imports. Then they have the production field, right? The melting down of the ores, the steel, and then they have a storage area where it's brought to the factory. There's evidently a lot of thought over on the green team, considering the actual process behind such a steelworks.
Yeah, making it like functional visually, right? Yes. Obviously, like we said, it's not practical. They've had 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes to build this. We're not expecting it to actually work, but the way that they've expressed how it should work. And I think we actually saw a moment there where it looks like they're almost going to extend this rail onto the larger railroad, right? To almost show them the creating this steel and then transporting it away from the factory as almost a whole life cycle happening. Again, we've touched on this all day, but it's always relevant. I think we'll find that the CAVC Celts have gone for more of a snapshot, right? Of this is generally what a Steelworks factory would look like in Wales.
Yes.
Whereas Cynn Valley Coalition have gone for a living space, right? An experience of what a steelworks would be like, and it suits their theme as well. You know, we had them discuss. They wanted to go for not just the positives, also the negatives. But they've incorporated the positives of, you know, how functional it is and how, you know, actually having moving vehicles and everything. But that would be noisy, you know, when you're walking around, you'll be able to hear this steel being transported constantly, and it looks very, you know, mechanical and routine. But that's what these steelworks function like as well. I really like how they've done it.
Now, I have never personally been to Port Talbot. Okay.
Oh, what a shame.
Right? But I have noticed that over on the red side, they've included a castle. Is this a nod to Port Talbot? I would know. I've not been there.
Port Talbot, right?
Is there a castle in Port Talbot?
Now, I don't believe so.
Interesting.
You do have, you know, you have Margam nearby, which would be within, you know, the region.
Yes.
But it's and I wonder if that's what they're looking for here. It's quite a distance from Steelworks itself, but maybe they are, like I said, trying to take a slice of life from Port Talbot.
Yeah.
Touching on that, their build space is entirely full, right?
Yeah.
They have got no empty space here to work with. No, it's not just terrain. They are thinking, well, we are going to use this space to its maximum. We see the bushes being built on one edge, and on the very other edge, that's where you've got like their redstone functions coming from too. So they are filling everything up, and I think that might be why they're incorporating more of a larger space of the area too. So I do like it though. I like it as a design choice. Someone's just hanging out in there. It looks like maybe that's the king of the castle. There we have the call coming through. 2 minutes left for this build. Leon, are you seeing any finishing touches that need to be added here?
I mean, we're seeing a bit of organic life being brought back, right? Especially on the red team. They're bringing in a lot of bushes, foliage, right? Yep. Trying to separate up a bit. One thing I wanted to note on the side of the green team, the Cynn Valley Coalition, they've actually decided that a lot of Blackstone, right, is a very visually dark build.
Yes.
They decided to break it up by utilizing diorite walls to surround it with a strip as a separation between a base floor and a second floor. They've also used, it looks like stripped dark oak logs to surround the pillars on the base floor as well. So keeping with that sort of darker color theme with a contrast of that light diorite strip, right? I think that's a really good use of blocks to diversify the palette. I'm a little bit disappointed, I want to say. I thought we'd see a lot more redstone, maybe with pistons and moving mechanics.
Right. Yeah.
Again, these steelworks are very busy. There's a lot of noises. I think there was a missed opportunity for both teams. Again, we might not know. They might be inside the build themselves.
Yes.
But we would love to see some pistons moving around.
Oh, countdown coming in.
Moved into the countdown.
Yep.
For the final 10 seconds.
Happy New Year, everyone. So our first final is concluded.
Absolutely.
That is it, done for this first game. Now, the good news is we are expecting to find out just after this final is concluded what the next set of finals will be as well. So we'll find out who has been winning the rounds up until this point. Now, we won't hear the final result from this final matchup yet, but we will be finding out obviously the rest of them, and then hopefully at the end of the day being able to award everyone coming out. But yeah, we're celebrating everything here today. It's someone's birthday too coming out. I hope we're all going to sing. Yeah, I'm not going to sing on Castellan. I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Not?
I can't do that to the viewers, to our production.
Oh, bless.
All right. So before we get you wrapped up with everything, we're going to take a quick and then get set up for the next game. But yes, see you guys really soon to find out the results of the finalists.
Absolutely.
All right, welcome back in, everyone. Yeah, again, still here at the Principality Stadium. We've got our finals coming through thick and fast. We actually have now announced all 3 of the finals. So I'm just going to run through it real quick. We have our primary school finals. It is going to be Ysgol Pennant versus the Maerdy Miners. We have our secondary school will be LLGT Scourge versus St. Joseph's. And the ALN finals will be Penybont Cobras versus Trinity Fields as well. And we're going to get straight on in to Ysgol Pennant v Maerdy Miners. So, Leon, why don't you tell us what the theme is that they've been given?
Yes, sir. So obviously we're back in the next battle stage, the Principality Stadium again, physically and in-game.
Yep.
They have a different build battle theme this time. Again, really focused on Welsh heritage and history. This time, the theme for the primary school finals is black gold. It's the thing that has shaped the Wales that we live in today. It's the coal of Welsh history, right? The first traces of coal industry in Wales date back to the 1200s and 1300s. Coal mining in South Wales became a significant source of income to Wales' economy during the second half of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we had the steelworks first.
Yes.
A lot of factory-based things, right? And again, of course, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution. I can imagine when we jump back in-game now, that we can see probably more factory-like things.
Yeah, it should be very similar in style, right? But obviously, coal and steel have their differences as well, and we'll have to see how these teams opt to tackle this. Again, already looks a lot different to how we've seen previously. You know, it's still got that little bit of Blackstone coming through as well, but a very natural-looking side of Ysgol Pennant there. I wonder what they're going for with that.
I mean, this is some very early forms of terraforming, right?
Yes.
Evidently, they have a very informed design in mind that is very crucial that they get this terraforming correct, because that's your base plate, right?
Yes.
We've seen some teams like Maes Miners here who've opted for a very flat location because they want the emphasis on the build itself. However, I think, personally, that terraforming is a very useful tool they can utilize, right? The coal industry was very much so based in the mountains, sometimes on the side of mountains around Wales. It's very rare to find a factory on flat land.
Yes, yeah. I know. So when I was shopping for a house and purchasing a house, part of the survey we had was that it revealed that it was built on top. That the house is actually built on top of a previous coal mine. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I said, is that something to be concerned about? And the person doing the survey basically said, no, it's actually pretty difficult to find a house in Wales not built on top of a coal mine. So to be fair, it's something like you said, it's been so widespread throughout Wales that it just makes sense to have it here. And yeah, you can see actually with the terraforming they've gone for. Looking to actually build probably a mine entrance, focusing around the not the inside of a mine or the factory side of the coal, but where the coal actually came from is the idea that I'm getting from them here. On the other side of Maes Miners, we saw them previously have some really cool ideas. You've already seen them starting to texture up the blocks as well. Have you seen anything jumping out at you here?
I'm a little bit curious as to what this copper sort of structure or construction is at the far back. Do you see that on the red one, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what that is or what sort of machine I presume that might be. I'm assuming the way they're working, it looks like they have different sort of isolated spaces. We actually have a tower already constructed, obviously for all the plume that comes out, right, and the smoke, etc.
Yep.
From the construction of all the coal or the management of it, in the facility. And I'm quite interested, as you said, this is essentially, this theme is a testament, right, to Welsh heritage.
Gold coming in there too, yeah.
Oh, you're right. It's very difficult to find someone who doesn't either know where a mine is in Wales or lives near one, right?
Yeah.
So for a lot of these folks, a lot of these builders, this is quite literally like their personal surroundings at home, right?
Yeah.
We might see some personal touches come through. We've got the first use of the gold lock today, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see what they're doing here. This might be, they could use it in two different ways, right? Of course, there's gold when it comes to minerals, right? And how you can smelt that down. And then, of course, there's a reference as well to using it as a very saturated block. It's almost like a hazard effect, right?
Yes, true.
Black and yellow. On the side of Ysgol Pennant, on the green team, obviously they're getting to the end of their terraforming, and I think you're correct on this, Judas. This looks like the start of a coal mine. You can see a lot of coal veins popping out, including coal blocks, right? Suggesting there's a lot more density in these particular areas.
Yes.
I think this is a very, very nice, difference between how they've approached actually building this, right?
Yeah.
One team might be perhaps inspired by the steelworks, of course. The other team is going to the heart of the issue, right? The core sort of origin point of coal in the mountains.
Yeah, and I think you touched on an interesting point there, actually. These teams were watching the Steelworks battle, right? We have screens up here in the Principality Stadium, which actually been showing the other build battles that have been going on. So they had the chance to take a little bit of inspiration from those other teams as well. And I think that's what we're seeing from the Maes Miners there. And of course, the Maes Miners, surprising that they're not the ones going for the mine build instead. But Ysgol Pennant probably playing them at their own game here. But plenty of time for these players to really leave a line, right? We are in our final matchup for these teams. We are 30 minutes left on this timer too, so it's definitely the time to, if you've had any cool, interesting strategies that you want to really start to show off, now is the time to do it. And that's why we're getting some really crazy builds, completely different to what we've seen so far today.
I'm going to say both of these builds are very visually textured. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Not just the accumulation, the block palette of the black stone, cobblestone, stone, copper, right? Terracotta as well. They have quite literally used all the different elements of the earth in this build on the side of the Maes Miners. And then on the side of Ysgol Pennant, the actual mountain-esque sort of landscape they've created is, of course, very textured with all the different veins, as I mentioned previously. In fact, they've given us that almost like slice of cake example I mentioned earlier, right? Of the coal in the ground. Of course, coal is actually mostly generated in a further sort of higher up in terms of a y-axis.
Yes.
Both in game of Minecraft, in real life as well, too, right? So I think they've actually made a conscious nod to that by creating these two mounds, right?
Yes.
And I think the idea on the side of Ysgol Pennant is to create this factory or coal sort of industry that is coming from the source and sprawling down the mountain.
And I'm wondering what's coming out from the Maes Miners here, because this structure that they've gone for, we noticed the stack with the smoke plume coming out of it, but the rest of the build is very broken and damaged is what it looks like here. So I'm not sure what that is going to end up being. It doesn't look like it's planned to be a full structure, or if it is, it's almost being pieced together, right, with different types of structures coming into it. But you know, we do still have some time for them to work with, but they would like to be starting to finalize these builds. You can see a large structure coming up on the Ysgol Pennant side as well. So definitely these teams trying to come to the end of their builds and really start to add some detail. But like you said, so textured. You look at this stone block at the front side for the Maes Miners there. It's all very random, very stone, very natural looking. Yeah. And and it's really cool that they managed to put this there physically, right? They have done that block by block and still managed to come out with such a natural looking structure in the end.
Now, I think what we're seeing here is we're down to, at least on our timer, the last 12 minutes, as we've mentioned previously, right, coming up to more so towards 10. I think both teams are scrambling, trying to get the build finished, right?
Yep.
It looks like both teams, we've talked a lot about the teamwork throughout the day, right? We've had several teams come up and inform us about what their team structure is like. I think in this case, it looks like both teams have very isolated teams, right? They have people working on independent different parts. It might be the case that both teams need a leader to step up and say, hey, we need a cohesive approach. The factory on the side of the Maes Miners, you've got 10 minutes left? Can you get that done in time? Like a factory looking cohesive, right? Maybe they're going for this very textured, maybe run down sort of aesthetic.
Yes.
Who knows? Maybe a modern interpretation of something that is quite literally legendary when it comes to Welsh history and lore. However, we've mentioned this as well for today. Of course, there's a scoring rubric, right? 6 different categories. One of them also being, of course, redstone. We've seen nothing of the lights on the side of Ysgol Pennant, apart from a cart that is going back and forth on an infinite track because they've used a slime block to actually bounce the cart, to change its direction.
That's great.
That's pretty interesting. Okay, but that's not the most redstone we've seen all day.
Yes.
On the side of Maes miners, we've seen a classic. All the schools love this particular technique when it comes to redstone with the dispensers and repeaters.
Yep.
And then launching off fireworks. I'm intrigued as to what the activation process is like because it looks like it might be manually activated compared to some of the automatic timers we've seen throughout the days. I tell a lie, it looks like they're actually trying to set up a redstone timer as we speak. I have noticed, though, that the fireworks they launch up is both black and gold, right?
Oh,
I
that's
thought
nice.
about this earlier, but when it came to the steelworks, if you put a firework and you launch it and it hits a ceiling, it will actually explode early in a contained area. I wonder if Ysgol Pennant are trying to create the sort of flames that comes from the factory itself.
Oh, yeah.
And if that's the case, we're having a nod to the actual experience of the coal industry in Wales.
Like we've said, one of the things that has been highly sought by these teams in these builds is actually a living space, right? Something where, like you said, the noise of a coal factory, right? And everything. I say a coal factory, I know it's not, they're not producing the coal there, but obviously where it is being processed. I think it's definitely an interesting topic to touch on and how you can make something like this come to life. And I think you're right. We're using those fireworks to create a loud scene, a scene that has, industry about it, right? It's very functional. You see them there, bang, there go the black and gold fireworks again. And it's really cool. I'm still interested to find out what this sort of copper structure is at the front. It almost looks like a monument of some kind of logo. I want to say something.
I think it's a nod to those giant wheels that would take the elevators down and up the shafts of the mines.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like that to me, right?
Yeah.
When I think about the big pit in Wales, right? The last time I went was in primary school.
Yeah.
But I saw structures like that.
Yes.
Right? It seemed very spherical. It seemed structured. It's on a stand. I think that's what it is.
Oh, that's really cool. See, those sorts of detail is what you pull out when you start researching. Don't forget, they didn't find out about this topic until literally 5 minutes before the build started. So they have had to very quickly find out the most relevant topics that they want to look at, find things like this lift, but also how you're going to build it, right? I can't imagine, Leon, many people have built one of those coal mine lifts in Minecraft before. So you are really having to think on your feet and put something together like that. But I do think you're right. I think that is what they've gone for with that structure as well. But it definitely feels more of a pressure situation, right? We have about 7 minutes left on this timer. Again, these teams haven't had time to prepare their topics. They are now reacting and responding to what they can come up with on the spot. And final few minutes, it's going to come down to who can keep calm under pressure, which is not easy to do for this age group, right? These are primary school students, probably never been in this sort of competitive situation before. But, this is where you get the chance to learn and grow, right? So I really hope I hope no matter what happens and who ends up coming out as the winners, both teams can feel happy with the end product that they've produced.
Absolutely. And we just saw a firework launch on the side of the green team, right? I've just also realized again, they've taken different approaches. Previously, we saw the campfires creating the particles for the plumes of smoke, right? And again, we saw in that game, cobwebs used very traditional in Minecraft history, right? To create that sort of smoky, cloudy effect. In this case, the green team have actually opted for a more 3D approach and have used various terracotta grays, light shades, dark shades to create a smoke plow where I think one of the mines has actually collapsed. We talked about narrative earlier, right? In this case, the green team, which I think might be Ysgol Pennant, they have actually managed to incorporate that in their build, and they're also shooting up fireworks. I mentioned if a firework hits the underneath something, it will explode early.
Yeah,
they are actually shooting fireworks up into the bottom of it. We talked about earlier how they're positioned in this Principality Stadium build battle stage in Minecraft, right? They are quite literally in each other's face. It's quite competitive.
Yes.
We've had the side of the Maes miners non-stop shooting fireworks at them throughout this build battle, right? I think Ysgol Pennant have just finally answered back, but they've done it in a creative approach where they said, hey, this firework is also part of this grey plow of smoke coming out this mine. It's part of the story.
Yeah.
It's part of the narrative.
I love that. Again, I'm glad you've caught it, It's something like that where, again, it's similar to what we saw previously as well, not just touching on the good sides of it. Like, yes, the black gold, the economy, great stuff, but there are also negatives, right? And it is very artistic to consider not just the positives, but also the negatives. Again, I don't know how mature it was for the post-16s to come up with that, but these are primary students who come up with that. I think that's a really nice detail to add in there, you know, because having all of these different perspectives and ways you can look at these topics are really, really good. But again, the onslaught from the Maes Miners, be it a mental battle or what, just barraging fireworks in the face of Ysgol Pennant. But hey, look, playing the game and playing it well. I really like what we're seeing.
I kid you not, I think one of the builders on the side of the Maes Miners, his job is just reloading the fireworks. I think that is his job. He's doing a great job. Mental warfare, right? It's a very competitive element, of course. We're in the last 5 minutes, right? We got 4 minutes on our timer.
Yeah.
I want to bring us back to that scoring card, okay?
Yeah.
6 categories. Aesthetics, right? The visuals, the block palettes, the redstone, teamwork, right? We can't really comment on. We can only see how they're approaching the game, of course, right? The size of the area. If we break this down category by category, of course, we're not the judges, right? There's actually judges who have the absolute luxury or, of course, devilish task to deal with when it comes to actually trying to judge between these two teams. I'm curious what teams are going to be winning what category, right? On the size and area, both have utilized a lot of the space.
Yes.
I'm going to argue that maybe Ysgol Pennant has used more of the environment visually as well. Or maybe the Maes Miners, actually, sorry. I think Ysgol Pennant also been on the green side. I think they've not really considered the foliage or of that sort of stuff, right?
Yes.
They can very easily hit the grass with some bone meal. That we've seen them do it earlier, for example, right? They know what to do with it, but maybe their focus is dedicated somewhere else right now. This is also the first pair of builds, right? We're into the last 3 minutes of the build battle. Do we reckon both teams are going to finish in time?
I'm not sure that they are going to finish in a way that they would have the previous rounds, right? We are seeing a lot more of empty space for Ysgol Pennant coming out here. Like you said, they haven't even managed to fill this grass with even just some bone meal on it to grow some weeds. But they probably don't want to do that because it doesn't quite fit the theme. But then you are ending up with this wide empty space that you'd probably need to fill. Whereas we've discussed basically all along, Maes Miners with this, cold storage unit that they're looking at still has a wide open ceiling to it, which they presumably would want to fill. We discussed on even if they were planning on filling it or if they were maybe considering, an abandoned coal factory. But obviously with the stacks being lit, you'd think of it more as being currently active. So they will need to get that going. But I think this is the first time we're going to see actual time pressure really kick in, because 2 minutes on the timer, if that word is going to start spreading around between these players too, they're going to be aware of exactly how little time they have. And now it's just finishing touches. What can you sacrifice and what can you put together?
Because there is points to be earned in the visual accuracy of things, right? I don't actually know what that is. That little sort of stretch of I don't know.
It's black and gold. It's very cool.
I'm pretty sure that's stained glass panes, and when you put it vertically, it creates a pillar. I think that's what they've done there. I don't know what that necessarily represents, because I don't think there was mainly electricity when it comes to this. Maybe it's that hazard sort of color combination we mentioned before.
Yes.
But they're using a lot of vertical space. Maybe they're trying to dominate in that point space, Who knows, right? Because I wanted to say, at this point, or maybe it's a beacon actually, and they've somehow made it alternate colors. I think that's a beacon all the way down there.
Can you do that? You can alternate the colors?
I did not know. We've learned something new.
Look, these students are able to just teach us stuff we didn't even know possible. I really like the idea of using it, utilizing the black and gold color scheme that they've gone for there. Very, very cool options there. And just beacon going all the way up there. So we're coming towards the end of this round now. I'm not sure when the actual countdown timer will kick in. The Maes Miners are aware of the timer going low because they've restarted the firework onslaught coming through. And I don't know, it's going to be very, very close to call between these two teams.
They've actually also included armor stands, and they've created little NPC miner characters that would work in the factory.
Oh, yeah.
Again, we haven't seen necessarily a rooftop on top of this, so I think both teams might be a little bit restricted due to the time, right?
Yes.
But we can definitely see some intent behind gathering some points in different sort of categories.
Yes.
20 seconds.
Oh.
10 we're down to the last 10 seconds for this build battle.
10.
Oh,
as the countdown is initiated. Will both teams finish in time?
They got to get out of the space as well to guarantee that they are done.
And that is the build battle finished
is up
in the physical space, and this is what we're left with on the screen. So well done to both teams. Very different approaches, right? One went for the origin of this theme.
Yep.
One went for maybe informed by the previous build battle, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more of a sort of cohesive response to the industrial age itself.
Yeah, I think you saw then as well. Ysgol Pennant actually managed to add quite a lot to fill up that empty space that they had. So I think they might feel a bit more comfortable now, not having all those empty spaces and actually building the coal collection facility around the mines too, which is a nice use of the space, right, that they did have to work with. So
I'll tell you what. I think, actually, combined together, imagine this wasn't a build battle. I think these two teams would create a fantastic recreation of the mining industry, right? You had the collection process, as you mentioned, down to the processing space as well. Combine this with the previous build battle, and you would have an entire industrial city almost rising from Welsh students today.
Maybe that's what we need to do next, just have one big build between all the teams. But it sounds like we are going to get straight on into the next set soon, and that will be LLGT Scourge versus St. Joseph's. Sorry, was that? All right, so we've had a bit of a shuffle. So is it
Penybont Cobras?
Okay, newsflash: Penybont Cobras actually coming up next against Trinity Fields is the ALN finals coming up next. So again, we are going to take a short break. We'll be right back for that one. that is looking like the Severn Bridge to me. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the end goal for that. And like you said, that's a very modern style. It's meant to be driven on, right? I don't really believe you have the option of walking along the Severn Bridge. So. And if you did, it would probably take you quite a while. So yeah, not too surprised to see it, just built as you rode there. But yeah, and then a different style of bridge. It almost looks like a pier on that side, right, where it just suddenly ends. Yes, it's not quite got over a body of water yet, but it does feel like a very wooden style bridge. And like you said, it's very light, almost feels new. Yes. Right, it looks completely different stylistically to the supposed Severn Bridge over that side as well. So I really like the way that they've gone about this. With the topic being bridges of Wales, you don't want to just build one bridge. Ideally, you want to pluralize that, and they've done that with completely different styles.
Yeah, that's an important note or very specific piece of information in the build theme, right? It wasn't a bridge of Wales. Bridges, right, represent different types of bridges that are available. I think this is a great way to approach it. It looks like Trinity Field have employed the plumber again to get this spoil or the spillage from the build battle arena cleaned up. But I have to note, on the Penybont Cobras side, I keep wanting to say Penyboat, I quite like that they've gone for this very sort of ancestral approach, right?
Yes.
They've actually started they've included vines and stone bricks with, I believe, moss on it as well to create this like almost weathered effect of water and foliage climbing up to the build, right? I think we have a very contrasting approach from the two different teams. On one side, of course, we have a modern approach, right, with all sorts of different builds. On the other side, we have a very sort of old historic approach.
Yes.
Despite having the exact same theme, they've gone for a completely different representations and vibes when it comes to the bridge.
Well, if we thought it was a limited topic, we've completely proven wrong. Like you said, just looking left and right at these, they are completely different outcomes. And yeah, I love it. I love the detail that's really being added now. We discussed the fact that functionally, the engineering caps have been on, and they've really discussed how to make these bridges look like they are functional, right? Like they could exist in this type of space. But then now they've had this time to really get artsy with it, right? Like you said, the moss coming up over this water bridge on the side of the Penybont Cobras there with all these vines growing up. You see that the bushes now being added to the side. It's really, like you said, ancestral looking coming out of it. And yeah, it's really, really impressive. Now working on the details of the terraforming. Again, not just putting slabs of rock and slabs of dirt, naturalizing these things, right?
Yes.
Putting some little indentations, imperfections throughout it. It makes it look so natural. Almost makes it look like the bridge, the very man-made bridge, is meant to be a part of the environment as well, just from how long it's been there. So I love that from the Penybont Cobras, but I love the stylistic choice of Trinity Fields as well to mix it up and have us really think about the modernization of bridges and how they look these days.
Yeah, almost in a sense, it's like nature meets bridge or bridge meets nature, right?
Yes, it's what came first. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a very intriguing approach, right? The history, the origin point of this bridge from the Penybont Cobras is questionable, right? You don't know where it's come from. It has its own lore at this point, its own histories, right? However, on the side of Trinity Fields, we're into the last 5 minutes of this build battle, okay? Obviously, I like to bring it back to the scoring rubric, right?
Yes.
The actual score sheets, how they're earning points in what categories. Despite the visual sort of prowess, the grand scale that the Penybont Cobras have achieved with their bridge, their build, I think the Trinity Fields has got a far more diverse block palette with sandstone, right?
Yes, I think it's sandstone,
the hollow wood, very, very, very effective use of that very vibrant white clear for the support beams, as we mentioned previously. I think that's very, very strong personally. And then also, as well as that, redstone, right? Redstone pops up towards the end of these build battles. Usually there's some sort of thought or consideration of it once you've got the general build theme and aesthetic. We can see that Trinity Fields have used redstone lamps. They've got them manually activated with levers, which are pretty well hidden. They actually look like they're attached to the bridge itself because the levers are facing down. I like that. Whether that was intentional or not, I think that's a very lovely detail. We can see, in fact, they're actually adding a bunch of fireworks, I believe that is, again. A grand display. for the bridge. Maybe it's the grand opening of their bridge.
Oh, yeah,
celebrate it. Who knows? But I haven't seen any redstone from the side of the Penybont Cobras. Again,
that's
perhaps
true.
They've hidden it from us, and that's a really good thing that they've done because they earn points for that. I think if we were to categorize what teams might be winning and what points, right? A lot of the horizontal base of both teams has been really well utilized. But very obviously, the Penybont Cobras, their grand triple-sized bridge, or triple bridge, huge-sized bridge, has ended up probably dominating in the size and area category, right?
Yeah,
the aesthetics, however, I think this comes down to the judges' personal taste. You have literally its own history, unknown origins,
very natural,
modernized various type of bridges for various modes of transport, right? One of the key points of a bridge in the first place. And then think about the other categories, like I mentioned earlier, the Trinity fields, that block palette, they've also included lighting, right? We can actually see that, as I've mentioned that, Penybont Cobras have quickly ran over the bridges with lanterns and decorated it to include lighting in their own build as well. So both teams have addressed the lighting side of things.
Yes.
And then, of course, we don't know necessarily what the teamwork looked like. It looked like both teams had a similar approach. They had people who were good in certain areas. And quite literally in Trinity Fields, they said, hey, some guys will have a bridge to themselves. Some guys will be the waterways. One of you is a plumber, right? On the side of the Penybont Cobras, they had one guy who was like, yeah, your blocks per minute is amazing. You're the one placing blocks for this giant bridge that we're creating and the towers, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like both teams assigned roles really early on, cracked on with what works. And it looks like now in the last couple of minutes, that both teams are coming around and adding finishing touches. You can see that Penybont Cobras are actually considering the environment. Again, that's one of the points that you could earn in one of the categories for the visuals, right? They've started to include lily pads and different types of foliage as well.
Yeah.
Very effective, right? We're into the last minute now. I think both teams could be very happy with their outcome of their builds so far. What are your closing thoughts on this particular build battle?
Although the one question mark I have is on the side of the Penybont Cobras, you see them with a large part of their structure actually outside of the boundary being set. Now, in some cases, you might argue that the style of bridge they've gone for, especially if it's representative of a real bridge, then they maybe needed that extra space, but time's running out. They can't correct it now. They're just going to have to let it go. Time is up. That is their submissions for the ALN finals. And I really like what we've come out with, right? We did say bridges maybe feels like a limited topic at first, but we just saw that the amount of flexibility you can have with even that type of topic. And really nice shows of engineering, creativity, and again, I'm sure research as well. They wouldn't have known what they were going to look for. Nobody has bridges on the brain at most times a day. We have to look into some things, and I think both teams should still be really happy with what they come out.
I think equally as impressive outcomes, right? Very contrast. I feel like it's going to be very difficult for the judges to allocate points when the outcomes are very different in approach, right? I feel like it might come down to a judge's personal choice of visuals block palette, but it might be those very minute decision making, right?
Yeah.
Because of course you might win and dominate in one particular category, like Penybont Cobras, they definitely win in the area category. Right? They have to be. But then block palettes definitely go to the side of the Trinity fields. When it comes to stuff like that and the lighting as well, both teams have used it, but how effective is it?
Yes. It's gonna be very close. Like I said, I'm glad I'm sat here and not having to be on the judges desk there. So that was obviously our ALN finals. We have one more finals for today coming up, and it's going to be LLGTC Scourge versus St. Joseph. So while we get set up for them for that last final, we will take a short break. But again, don't go anywhere. Last finals coming up soon.
See you in a bit.
builds and also structures, and that's pretty cool. They've used steel doors for the base of that. That's really cool.
To create some sort of like see-through effect, almost like chain link in a sense. Right?
Yes.
That's a very, very effective use of that as well. Some very vibrant colors. Love the TARDIS, like we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
A symbol of the creative industry in Wales, right? Especially when it's popped around even in my childhood, for example, right? As I mentioned before. It'll be interesting to see if both teams put a huge emphasis on the internals of the builds, as we can kind of already see coming together. We are at the latter half of this build battle, right? We've got around about 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes left. If we jump back, this is a little bit earlier compared to the previous one. So if we jump back to the rubric, the scoring rubric, I'm curious to see if both teams are trying to prioritize a certain point. Now, in here, obviously, St. Joseph's, all of these villages act as NPC characters, right?
Yes.
That is something that is very effective to use. I wonder if the side of Scourge on the green team will end up doing something similar, including a bunch of NPCs in their build as well. Looks like they're building a sort of theatrical sort of space inside.
Yes.
Hopefully we can get back out. Yes, we're good. Oh, there we go.
We've removed the villager.
We've taken a visitor with us. Bless. But one thing I want to draw attention to as well is there's a lot of open space around these, right? The grass fields.
Yes.
The base plate is the same. The verticality of the builds are the same. The total space and area that they're using are the same. I wonder what they're going to try and do to achieve some visuals. You can see on here, on the Scourge side as well, there's a lot of texture.
Yes, you can see that very clearly. Like as much as it from a distance looks just like a red tent, right? You can see they've used different types of blocks. You can see them start to incorporate that now. Looks like they, as we've seen a lot of these teams do, they built the skeleton of it, or they actually just built the tent and now are deconstructing it in order to add those little bits of texture and everything. You see the patterns coming out for the ice headboard with the redstone lamps too, and actually hiding that away. This is something we touched on. Going for specific areas of points, almost no redstone, if any at all, coming out from St. Joseph so far. So with Scourge coming in with this nice little light show going up, and that's a complex light show, right? Don't get me wrong. Ysgol has a lot of letters in it, and having those light up in the correct order and everything, you can see them having some difficulties with it, having to piece it all together. But they're doing a really good job, especially with the time they have left, right? They still can make that work. They still have the time, especially with the redstone expert on the case. They can handle that. You see the TARDIS there, almost underway, and again, it'll all come down to the specific details that you look to add, especially with the internals of these buildings too. It's just such a closely fought affair, right? This is a really two good teams clearly, and they know what they want to do. They've come up with completely different outcomes. They just have to pull it off as well as they possibly can and hope that it wins the judges' favor.
Now, when it comes to obviously where they can earn points, right, it looks like Team Scourge on the green side are very much so vying for the redstone point, right?
Yeah.
They want that category for themselves. The visual pattern that they're creating, they've fine-tuned it. The redstone engineer, the professional in this case, he's getting that nailed, right? That's looking stunning. In terms of size and area, I don't think you can really decide for either or, right? It's not necessarily up to us. Close. It's the judges who will have this very, very difficult task to address. However, this is a very broad topic of subject, right? The first category is how relevant and recognizable the builds are to the subject of the theme. I can't see it going either or for one team or the other. This is a very, very hard game. This could be the hardest build battle, and it's the last one today to try and score for our judges.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's standing out to me is this build that we're looking at here with St. Joseph's, I believe is meant to be venue Cymru. Yeah. Now, I have not seen this building in person, and what I would have to say then is it comes down to how accurate this build is to that actual venue, because it's not recognizable in the way that this Ysgol tent is, right? Because it's got the big signs say Ysgol, the food banners there. I love the way that that's been done, and they're really starting to decorate the internals of this now. Like, I have not been here either, but I feel like I am experiencing it through this method. Whereas, like I said, for St. Joseph's side, I hope they can add something that will actually make it more clear that that is venue Cymru that they are going for. It doesn't take much. I'm sure there will be some kind of signage that they can add maybe towards the end. But at the moment, Eisteddfod is basically winning on that category when it comes to the recognizability of it. But then there's still a TARDIS, and it still looks like a TARDIS, right? And I like how they've put this together as well. So it's going to be very close to call.
And I'd argue without the signage, right?
Oh, here we go.
We got signage coming on the side of St. Joseph's. Without the signage on either team, it'd be very hard to identify it, right? In Minecraft. So I think the signage is crucial. I think it's great that both teams have added it. But if you remove the signage, the most recognizable thing is the TARDIS on St. Joseph's.
Yes, that's very true.
So again, at this point, it's so difficult to decide. I'll tell you what, though, from what we've been spectating so far, St. Joseph's, you can see they have finally brought bone meal to grass, right? And they have decorated the environment. However, as I say that, you can see in the bottom right corner that the green team, Scourge, have also started doing the exact same.
Yeah.
They've also got a timer running, a redstone timer at the very bottom of the screen that we can just about see. Yeah. So they're trying to up the redstone antiques, right? It looks like each team, in the last couple of minutes that we have, 4 minutes left on our timer, it looks like both teams are quite literally going head-to-head for the biggest fireworks show.
Yeah.
However, I think Team Scourge have actually stolen a category.
Oh.
And I think it's in the visual creativity, the blocks, the colors, the palette. Because they've used glazed terracotta, powdered clay, or powdered red clay, and then red wool as well. The various red hues with different types of textures and patterns to create a very sort of fabric-based sort of tent cover for the Eisteddfod tent they popped up literally in this case, right? So I think they might be dealing that point overall because it's quite a diverse series of blocks on both sides, right?
Yes.
However, St. Joseph's, maybe Venue Cymru is a very clean and aesthetic building. But I would love to see at least a couple of different like snow blocks, quartz blocks, right?
Something like
all of these vibrant white blocks that you can definitely get just very slight hue shifts in as well.
Now you see them there finalizing the sign on that building. It seems like it's been pretty tough for them to nail down exactly how they want it displayed. But, you know, I did touch on the fact they should go for some kind of signage on the building. Yeah, they have done so. And like you said, it does depend on how accurate to the actual building this build is, right? Because as much as we've touched on the fact it's a very smooth looking building, right, there is not a lot of texture there. If that is accurate, then you can still find yourself getting some points off that, right? It doesn't always have to look, you know, the way that the tent does, right, where the tent has this texture built into it. If the building truly looks this way, then accuracy will win out over the aesthetics of it. And we're starting to see a bit of a redstone railroad going now around the outside of the St. Joseph's build. But we're coming down to the final minute or so, the countdown for the final 10 seconds will be coming into the pressure now has got to be huge, where you just want to finish off your last little details.
Yes, I think both teams have definitely addressed that redstone point, right? Perhaps on Team Scourge, this sign has really sort of won them that sort of department. Both teams opted for fireworks as well. Team St. Joseph's have actually got a wraparound sort of theme park experience, as we mentioned earlier, right? With a redstone railway, which is very, very fun to see. Maybe perhaps playing on the creative theme objective, right? By creating a creative experience to experience the actual build itself, right? I love the curtains inside of Venue Cymru. That looks gorgeous. The lighting rod with what's it called? An iron fence?
Yes.
I forgot what it's called. Bars, iron bars, that's it. The iron bar with lightning rod on top to make the microphone.
Yes.
That is
really
genius, right?
Really
attention to detail. We love to see that. We got the last 10 seconds countdown now. On 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done. The final build battle for today has concluded. Well done, both teams, St. Joseph's and Team Scourge.
I do think that was one of our best pairs of builds of the day.
Yes.
You know, like we said, so much freedom in the choice of topic, right, and exactly what you want to build. I think both teams did a really good job of doing something completely different than what we've seen all day.
Absolutely.
Yet again, you know, and I think, you know, pressure was on being the last game of the day. You know that's up. You really want to come through and win on that. And I think both teams, as I've said all day, should be really happy with the end product that they put out. I just have to say, what a credit to all of the teams that competed in this competition. The quality of these finalists was just so high. The semi-finals was so high quality. I don't know how they were even split apart either, but yeah, really good. But Leon, before we find out who our winners are today, final thoughts on what you've seen today?
I mean, I've had the luxury, as I said, to see a lot of these teams during the group stages leading up to this finals, the Minecraft esports finals in the Principality Stadium. Again, an incredible experience, especially seeing these teams develop. Like I said, there's a lot of teams that have whipped out a lot of techniques today that I haven't seen in any of the group stages, right? The fact that they still had some of these saved up for the finals is a testament to their skill.
Yeah.
And again, the structure of how this works, right? A lot of these teams will find out the theme for the day today, right? They have to have that discussion phase. Don't get me wrong, they've been practicing. We've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of students coming up telling us that, yes, we practice these different themes. Some teams said we're not practicing specific themes. We're practicing build styles. We make sure our redstone engineer is up to snuff with all of the latest tools and techniques, right? We saw some block pallets and blocks used from the newest update of Minecraft, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that some of these teams have already engineered a way to incorporate it in their build is a testament, again, to their skill and ingenuity when it comes to today's build battles.
It's been so impressive. It's been so much fun. I hope that everyone who's been here has enjoyed it. I hope everyone's been watching has enjoyed it. Leon, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Because I've definitely enjoyed myself too. But we are soon to find out the actual winners of the to a short break where the awards ceremony will take place, and then we'll come back and fill you all in on what has transpired here today. But it's been a really great day, and hopefully we get to see some really happy winners. But we'll be right back, and we'll tell you the winners soon.
See you in a bit. is the LLGTC Scourge.
Yeah.
They took the win in the end. A very strong performance from them. They should be very proud of their outcome. I think, again, the members they had on their team were particularly strong, especially in the isolated fields, right? Yep. For the relevant roles that they had for the builds is pretty good.
Yeah, the way that they, like you say, just the use of teamwork individually, right? You sometimes have to mix things up a little bit. You can't always do things as straightforward as you want. And yeah, they did a good job of that. But moving on to the ALN Grand Final winners as well, because that was hotly contested matchup. But it's the Penybont Cobras who end up coming out on top of that. I think it was just the grand design of that huge bridge just ended up winning them out.
I mean, the fact that they managed to get that thing up as fast as they did, and it was one guy doing it, right? We're talking about that. I still can't believe that. The blocks per minute that guy possesses is incredible. But obviously, the cohesiveness of the build, right? That team and their structure, they really brought it together well. And I think that was a consistent theme through a lot of the build throughout the day, right? So I think a very well-deserved win in that regard. And then moving on to the final category for today, the Post-16's Grand Final winners are the Cynnon Valley Coalition.
Yeah. Only got to see them once today, but they did a really good job. And, again, everyone who participated today, had a great build on show. We were just so impressed the whole day, basically. Every competition was like, man, how are the judges going to split it? Somehow they managed to split it, and that's how we got our winners today. But it's been a really good, fun day. Everyone's now packing up and heading home. But Leon, any closing thoughts on this? How have you enjoyed your day?
I mean, it's not my first time running an event in the Principality Stadium, right? It's the luxury of working in EsportsWales, one of the cooler places to work for the day. After all, first time for you.
Yes,
and hopefully we can make it back next year to Castor again. I think we nailed it today, to be honest with you. And the kids seem to love it. The people on the stream side seem to love it. So thank you very much to everyone watching. Is there any closing remarks from yourself, Judas?
Nothing more from me. Just thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for participating. Whether you made it to this event or you just took part in the leagues throughout the past couple of months as well. But it's been really good. Of course, I've been Judas. We've had LJPH over here backing us up. And signing off for today. Hope to catch you guys next time.
See you next time.